Chapter 746. A stream of thunder chi slowly flowed from Ji-Yu's palm. It flowed to his palm. He put his hand on the thunder chi. At this moment, the power of thunder and lightning suddenly descended. A loud rumbling sound was heard. Ji-Yu jumped up, flashed, and disappeared on the spot. The thunder chi slithered out of the red book and kept chasing after Ji-Yu. Ji-Yu walked to the sides, and the thunder chi fell in front of Ji-Yu at this moment. Ji-Yu held the power in his hands. He also gathered a powerful Xian energy and covered both of his palms. He reached out and grabbed the two lightning snakes in his hand. Then, he pulled them with force. They were torn apart. After Ji-Yu landed on the ground, he stepped forward and took the red book with the protection of his gang chi. He withdrew his hand. He put the book on the table. They took a closer look and found that there was not a single word on the book. At this moment they took a deep breath. They looked at each other. Ji-Yu walked out in another direction. This red book might be what the group of men in black wanted to get. They looked at each other and stood up. Ji-Yu put the book into the storage ring. The elder touched his wand. "Did you find the thing?" Ji-Yu sighed and shook his head. There was a trace of doubt in his eyes. Could it be that they really couldn't find it? He immediately guessed in his heart, but the power of guessing also made him nervous. Ji-Yu followed the elder back to the Tianyi Palace. Ji-Yu and the others were indeed the first to come back from the experience. Li Sijiao felt a little proud. "Who asked you to play tricks behind my back all day long?" The Saintess of Cyan Phoenix didn't expect that Ji-Yu could be the first to come back. With a cold snort, a few people appeared on the ground with a flash of silver light. They looked in the direction of Ji-Yu and said indifferently, "Why did you come back so slowly?" The two of them looked at each other. After seeing this scene, Ji-Yu snorted coldly. The saints were frightened and didn't know what to say. They could only lower their heads. At this moment, the person beside them slowly took a step forward. He then said plainly, "Saint Ji-Yu was able to return so quickly. I'm sure you still have a powerful force in your hands. We can exchange blows." As soon as his voice fell, the profound energy in his body abruptly moved from his dantian to Ji-Yu's direction. Ji-Yu said indifferently, "This is the Tianyi Palace." He didn't pay much attention to Ji-Yu. He just picked up the precious weapon in his hand and charged in the direction of Ji-Yu. Ji-Yu stepped on the ground and quickly shot backward. The other party kept chopping in the direction of Ji-Yu with his axe. The Xian energy from the axes fell heavily on the ground. Holes appeared one after another on the ground. Ji-Yu suddenly jumped up and landed on the other party's giant axe. She raised her head and looked at the other party. There was a trace of vigilance in his eyes. The other party suddenly charged in the direction of Ji-Yu. He didn't summon the Kuan Pring giant sword. Instead, he stepped on the ground lightly and quickly retreated. The burly man didn't seem to give up. He didn't believe that he couldn't catch Ji-Yu in front of him. His palm landed on Ji-Yu's body, but Ji-Yu's figure disappeared in the blink of an eye. He landed on the ground with a light tap. He quickly turned around and kept leaping lightly. He stepped on the wall beside him. After 2 steps, he suddenly turned around. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of the other party. A ball of chi appeared in his hands. Chi technique, fiery thunder fist. Ji-Yu roared angrily and suddenly punched out. A loud boom was heard. He hammered heavily on the wall, and a huge rumbling sound came from the wall. At this moment, the surrounding walls slowly collapsed. They fixed their eyes on Ji-Yu. At this moment, the remaining 2 people also came forward at the same time. The remaining Chi practitioners fixed their eyes on Ji-Yu. They drew out their precious weapons at the same time and aimed their swords at Ji-Yu's neck. Ji-Yu's protective aura suddenly covered her whole body and blocked that fatal blow. The long swords of the 2 holy sons stopped in front of Ji-Yu's neck. The huge amount of water vapor actually froze in an instant. The 2 long swords suddenly froze. They turned into pieces and fell to the ground. Seeing this, Ji-Yu looked at them. At this moment, they turned around and fixed their eyes on Ji-Yu. In an instant they disappeared from where they were. They picked up their precious weapons and instantly appeared in front of Ji-yu. Ji-yu channeled the qi in her body and infused it into the precious weapons. A heavy sword was chopped down. There was no need to shout, and the blazing city seal was directly released. Blazing flames spread in all directions, closing in on the three holy suns. Suddenly, a strong wind blew. A person appeared in front of Ji-yu and the others. He picked up the precious weapon in his hand and stabbed it into the ground. The blazing fire that had been ignited by the raging fire seal was completely dispersed. Interesting. May I know your name? That person held the sword with one hand and opened his eyes. He looked in Ji-yu's direction and said, Qinlong, Qinlong? Hearing this name, the senior disciples who were watching from the side all sucked in a breath of cold air and exclaimed at the same time. Qinlong? Isn't this the sword young master of the 4 major regions? That's right. It's said that his precious weapon is a long sword. He can stab 80 times in a flash. He's really powerful, he said coldly. The saintess of the Cyan Phoenix is not someone you can humiliate. Watch my sword. After saying this, he disappeared on the spot like a green bird. A moment later, he appeared behind Ji-yu. He held the longsword in his hand and thrust it at Ji-yu's back. His vigor force instantly shrouded Ji-yu's back, despite the protection of the vigor force. Ji-yu also felt the cold aura piercing directly into her heart. He looked at the other party and said indifferently, You're quite strong. After saying this, they instantly jumped down and charged in Ji-yu's direction. Ji-yu picked up the sword in her hand and directly waved it. After Ji-yu blocked 2 strikes, he suddenly turned around. At this moment, the Kuan Pring giant sword chopped down heavily. With a loud bang, cracks appeared on the stone slabs downstairs, and they fell heavily to the ground. They jumped up in an instant and set their eyes on Li Chia. The sword young master was naturally much stronger than the others in terms of using the sword. When Ji-yu saw this, a trace of a smile suddenly appeared on the corners of his mouth. At this moment, the treasure in his hand also turned into a long sword. He stabbed the sword forward. When they collided with each other, they instantly fell backwards and slid on the ground. They looked at Ji-yu. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Ji-yu forced the 3 saints to retreat and directly rushed in the direction of the sword young master. He jumped up and rotated his body, instantly erupting the power of 2 lightning bolts. Although the sword young master was fast, he did not have time to stab in Ji-yu's direction. He abruptly turned around and stabbed the ground with his sword. After seeing this, the treasure in Ji-yu's hand emitted a dazzling light at this moment. They instantly flew forward and laughed loudly. The sword young master only felt incomparably refreshed today. He threw the treasures towards the sky. In an instant 2 treasures appeared in the sky. Then, he waved his hand towards the people below. The treasures fell down like meteors. Boom, boom, boom. 3 loud sounds suddenly sounded, and they each took a step back. After looking at each other, Ji-yu said indifferently, Good skill. With this fight, the 2 of them had almost used up all the Xian energy in their bodies. The sword young master pulled back the treasure in his hand and walked in front of Ji-yu. He said indifferently, You and I have used up all our strength. The 3 of them still wanted to attack, but Li Sijiao suddenly said, Do you really think that I don't exist? This incomparably dignified sentence reverberated forward. If not for the powerful Xian energy in Ji-yu's hand, she would have been killed by the other party. After saying this, Ji-yu said indifferently, Come. The 3 young masters suddenly stopped talking and walked out from behind. Ji-yu said indifferently, What do you plan to do? Qing Luan snorted coldly and did not say anything. He just turned his head and waved his hand heavily. In an instant, the 2 of them gradually approached. They flew forward in an instant and slashed in Ji-yu's direction with their swords. Qing Luan took a few steps back, and the heavy sword hit the ground at this moment. After a loud bang, they were sent flying in all directions. After a simple exchange, Qing Luan discovered that Li Sijiao's strength had improved. "You've become stronger." After saying this, Ji Yu sneered. At this moment, the master of the law enforcement hall also walked out. "How dare you? This is outside the door. How can you be allowed to mess around here?" At this moment, the remaining saints also returned. The saintess, who had extremely delicate eyebrows, also had a smile on her face. Chapter 747. Seeing that everyone had returned safely, the head of the law enforcement hall didn't say anything else. He just walked into the main hall. After exchanging a few words with the head of the law enforcement hall, a man in a long robe walked out of the main hall. He put his hands behind his back and said calmly, "Who are you?" They set their eyes on Ji Yu. At this moment, the rest of the people quickly came forward and fixed their eyes on Ji Yu. Ji Yu suddenly turned around. She waved her long sword in an instant and the sword collided with the man. Along with a loud bang, the people in the surroundings were stunned. The surrounding people were sent flying in all directions. They landed on the ground and fixed their eyes on Ji Yu. He said calmly, "How dare you? What a powerful man." After saying this, Ji Yu smiled faintly. "I didn't expect the master of the Tianyi sect to be so powerful. But so what?" After the man in the long robe clashed with Ji Yu's sword, he put away his precious weapon with satisfaction. He said calmly, "You're quite powerful." After saying this, Ji Yu took 2 steps forward. Everyone cupped their hands at each other. At this moment, the rest of the people slowly took a few steps forward. The great guardian of the Tianyi sect said, "Ji Yu is quite powerful. Are you willing to join the Tianyi sect?" If it were an ordinary person, they would definitely be willing to join the Tianyi sect after hearing this because the Tianyi sect was too powerful. However, Ji Yu was indeed an exception. Ji Yu said calmly, "Retreat." After saying this, the rest of the people raised their heads abruptly and exchanged glances with each other. Ji Yu said, "I'm sorry, but I refuse." After saying this, they looked at each other and took 2 steps forward. A stream of dark force was contained in his hands. Ji Yu said calmly, "I'm a disciple of another sect. I won't join another sect." The great protector smiled and didn't say anything. He just closed his eyes. He let out a long breath of cold air. The dark force in his hands was quickly gathering at this moment. He set his eyes on Ji Yu. "How dare you?" One of the disciples roared angrily because in their hearts, the Tianyi sect was the god in the eyes of all cultivators. Now that the god in their hearts was humiliated, how could they let him go? After thinking about this, they flew up at the same time and came to Ji Yu. He raised his hand heavily, and the profound energy quickly gathered in his palm. There was a loud bang. At this moment, they jumped up quickly and landed in Ji Yu's direction. At the same time, Ji Yu also threw out a punch, and the 2 profound energies collided violently at this moment. Ji Yu flew backward. He glided on the ground and said calmly, "Come on." After saying this, the rest of the people gradually approached Ji Yu. The 2 of them looked at each other and stood up. At this time, the great guardian waved his hand and said, "It's done. You can leave." After saying this, they slowly stepped back and set their eyes on Ji Yu. Ji Yu cupped her hands and didn't say anything. Our Tianyi sect is a place where strength speaks. From today on, in addition to the necessary lessons, you can challenge the people ranked in front of you at any time. Of course, the higher the ranking, the better the treatment. After saying this, they looked at each other and slowly took 2 steps forward. A strong dark force quickly gathered in their hands. "I want to challenge Ji Yu. Ji Yu is just a foreign disciple. She doesn't have a ranking. If you lose, your ranking will be hers. Are you willing?" "Yes, I'm willing." After he finished speaking, he leaped onto the ring and looked straight ahead. Suddenly, a ray of sword light, as bright as day, pierced towards his direction. He abruptly turned around and thrust his sword forward. At this moment, 2 bursts of profound energy rapidly collided together. At the same time, they landed on the ground. Jiyu said calmly, "Make your move. 1-on-1. He's quite strong." After saying this, they raised the weapons in their hands at the same time. He charged towards Jiyu. Jiyu picked up the life treasure in front of him and slashed out with his sword. A loud clanging sound rang out, and he retreated abruptly. Her eyes were fixed on the person in front of her. Dark skill, earth explosion. The disciple in front of her suddenly stood up. The veins on his hands had already appeared on his skin. He punched out and heavily hit the ground. At this time, countless pillars of fire suddenly exploded and approached Jiyu. Jiyu swung the Kunpring giant sword in front of her. Two strong dark forces suddenly collided at this time. After seeing this scene, the two of them stood up and looked at Jiyu in disbelief. Jiyu also punched out with both hands at the same time. At the same time, it also brought out a flame. At this time, the sound of a bird flew out and let out a roar in the sky. At this time, the flaming bird let out an angry roar. At this time, the flaming bird gradually collided with each other. At this time, the giant flaming bird gradually expanded and absorbed all the pillars of fire on the ground into its body. At this time, the flaming bird fell rapidly. Boom! At this moment, another ball of raging fire suddenly swelled up, swallowing the flames in all directions. After seeing this scene, he said, "Kill!" The challenger's arms instantly turned into two flaming blades as he swung them forward. The flaming blades collided with the ground and countless flaming blades flew in Jiyu's direction. Jiyu suddenly jumped up. After jumping over the ball of fire, a green skin appeared on her body. The Inferno battle suit had been evolved, although it did not look so powerful. However, it could absorb a lot of the attack power. When they saw this scene, they flew backward and fixed their eyes on Jiyu. Jiyu said indifferently, "You have good strength." The two of them looked at each other. He forced his way in the direction of Jiyu. Jiyu picked up the Kunpring giant sword and walked forward at the same time. The challenger was forced back by Jiyu's sword. The great guardian said, "You are no match for him. Back down." From today onwards, Jiyu is the 700th disciple. After saying this, Jiyu cupped his hands. A servant placed the token in front of Jiyu. Jiyu picked up the token in front of him. He smiled faintly. He disappeared on the spot and said indifferently, "Is there anyone else who wants to challenge me?" The remaining people looked at each other. They had fought the three saints, fought the sword prince, and now defeated him. How could they still have the mood to challenge him? After thinking of this, they suddenly said, "Okay." At this moment, the person next to them slowly walked forward and looked in the direction of Jiyu. He said indifferently, "Then let me take you there." After saying this, Jiyu followed them and walked in another direction. He walked through the gate. A courtyard called Qingfu Courtyard appeared in front of him. Two people ran out and looked in front of Jiyu. Jiyu looked at them and the two of them looked at each other. One of them picked up the Kunpring giant sword beside him and charged in the direction of Jiyu. Jiyu flew 2 steps forward and swung his sword forward heavily. The two swords collided at this moment. Jiyu said indifferently, "Who is it?" After hearing Jiyu's words, they raised their heads at the same time and looked at each other. One of them said slowly, "Since you entered our Qingfu courtyard, you naturally have to face our challenge. If you can't pass, you can sleep outside tonight." Everyone immediately laughed out loud. Jiyu didn't pay attention to them and just closed his eyes. At this moment, a clap of thunder sounded in the air. He took out a treasure weapon and charged in the direction of Jiyu. Jiyu brandished a prized sword and a loud rumbling sound rang out. At this moment they were sent flying. After sliding a few steps on the ground, they raised their heads and gathered a ball of Xian energy in their hands. At this moment, the Xian energy gathered in their palms. A heavy slap landed on the ground. At this moment, the flame rushed forward. Jiyu also waved his palm at the same time. The two Xian energies intertwined at this moment and rebounded. The rest of the people fixed their eyes on Ji. They never expected that a person who had just joined the Tianyi Palace would have such strength. Feeling this strength, they looked at each other and charged in the direction of the original direction. At the same time, they raised the Xian energy in their hands. At this moment, the Xian energy gathered and formed a dragon of Xian energy in the air. Ji revealed a smile at the corner of his mouth. Behind him, the head of a giant dragon slowly rose. It roared at the sky. That was the dragon of national fate. How could a giant dragon formed by Xian energy compare to it? At this moment, the giant dragon flew in front of Ji's dragon of national fate. Chapter 748. Go! The people who were making things difficult for Ji shouted at the same time. The giant dragon floating in the air let out an angry roar. Roar! After letting out a long roar, the giant dragon circled its body and flew towards Ji. The five-colored true dragon behind Ji also roared at the same time. It flew in front of Ji. The collision caused a huge explosion. The surrounding sand and stones flew out. Ji looked forward and couldn't help but frown. The huge dragon in front of them circled one round in the air before it flew down and looked at the group of people. They had never expected that the huge dark energy dragon that they had gathered together to form would actually be defeated in an instant by the opponent's attack. Ji instantly put away the five-colored true dragon. His eyes fell on them. The remaining two people looked at each other and carefully landed on the ground, locking their eyes on Ji. Senior brother, let me teach this stinking brat a lesson. The one who spoke was a thin and weak man. There was a monkey-like light in his eyes. After a while, the monkey-like man said, I am Feng Ho. Greetings, senior brother. However, your strength is truly valiant. Allow me to experience the strength of a dragon. After shouting out this sentence, he turned his head around and stepped on the ground. He flew up and quickly gathered a burst of profound energy in his hand. The dark force quickly gathered at this time. Feng Ho waved his hand and a hurricane came out of his body, blowing in front of Ji. His legs were like the wind and he disappeared on the spot. After a while, he suddenly turned around and slashed down with the Kunping giant sword in his hand. Xian energy was generated from the Kunping giant sword, and the demonic wind was blowing in another direction. Such strong wind! Ji could not help but exclaim in admiration. He instantly disappeared from where he stood. However, he had quite a lot of wind profound energy on him. At this moment, his profound energy flew out from his body and poured into the world. The dark wind force in the air gathered together. Profound skill, ardent wind blade. Right at that moment, the wind in the air was compressed by Ji's profound energy and turned into numerous blades. The blades danced in the air at that moment. The wind blade instantly arrived in front of Feng Ho. He never thought that Ji would be able to use dark wind force and control it so well. His eyes revealed a look of fear. He took 2 steps forward and stomped on the ground. At this moment, the ground started to tremble rapidly, and the wind blades started to gather rapidly. He could also control the dark force. A heavy sword slashed down and the two forces collided. Feng Marquis was sent flying. He slid on the ground and in the blink of an eye, Ji appeared in front of him. The Kunping giant sword slammed down on his head. Feng Ho's head suddenly hurt and he gave a pitiful cry. His whole body flew out and the wind blades left several bloody scars on his body. He let out a miserable shriek as he flew backward and fell heavily to the ground. He spat out a mouthful of blood. After gasping for breath, he couldn't say a word. After everyone saw Ji's strength, they all took 2 steps back and didn't dare say a word. Ji took 2 steps forward. Alright, stop messing around. A young student walked out and looked in Ji's direction. He cupped his hands in greeting. He lightly said, Greetings to young Master Ji. Young Master hasn't officially joined my heavenly sect yet, so I can't call you senior brother. but if young master is interested, you can come with me. After saying this, they looked at each other. Then, he took 2 steps in another direction. The other party brought Ji-yu into the courtyard. They went to the 2nd floor and slowly said to Ji-yu, "This is the residence of the 700th place." After saying this, they cupped their hands and left. At this moment, Feng Ho pulled a man and said, "Big brother, don't go. I'm not as good as them. I'll just cultivate properly." How can we let you off so easily after beating up someone from our Feng family? Although father and grandfather aren't here, as your big brother, I won't let anyone bully you. As soon as his voice fell, he picked up Feng Marquis and walked up to the 2nd floor. When the people on both sides saw him, they slowly walked to the other side in fear. Who is this? Isn't this Feng Tianlei? Feng Tianlei, the senior brother who used his physical strength to obtain the 500th place. Yes, it's said that his profound strength has reached the 8th level of the human profound realm. After hearing this sentence, the people around him quickly moved away. Ji-yu was meditating and cultivating the heaven-splitting skill when the door was suddenly kicked open. Ji-yu looked at the other party. "Who are you?" "Feng Tianlei." Feng Tianlei patted his chest and said arrogantly. However, Ji-yu didn't even look at him. She just closed her eyes and said indifferently, "So what?" After hearing this, he took a few steps back. "Kid, you beat up someone from our Feng family today, and you still ask me what? If you apologize obediently and give me a few pills, this matter will be over." Ji-yu smiled faintly. "What if I don't agree?" After hearing this, he revealed a smile and disappeared in the blink of an eye. In an instant, he appeared in front of Ji-yu. Countless people gradually walked over and looked in Ji-yu's direction. Feng Tianlei leaped into the air and landed heavily on the ground. He punched the ground and a huge crater appeared in an instant. Ji-yu said indifferently, "Good skill." After saying this, the other party raised his head and looked in Ji-yu's direction. In an instant, the 2 of them retreated and looked at Ji-yu. In an instant, the 3 of them landed on the ground and looked at Ji-yu. Ji-yu and Feng Tianlei collided heavily. A burst of profound strength exploded in the air. At this moment, the profound strength permeated the heaven and earth. In an instant, they arrived in front of Ji-yu. After Feng Tianlei's fist collided with Ji-yu's, he felt a numbing sensation on his shoulder. He locked his gaze on Ji-yu, and at the same time, took 2 quick steps forward to stand in front of Ji-yu. The muscles on his arms wriggled rapidly, and in an instant, they turned into an iron fist. His arms slammed heavily on the ground. There was a loud bang. 2 more holes appeared on the ground. He locked his gaze on Ji-yu and flew forward in an instant. He ran in front of Ji-yu and punched heavily. There was a loud bang. The sand behind Ji-yu quickly gathered in front of him. After seeing this, he stood up and disappeared in a flash. At this moment, the remaining few people quickly gathered around. "Do you need our help?" After hearing this, Ji-yu slowly took 2 steps forward. Ji-yu began to fight with the other party. His fist landed heavily on the other party's body. Feng Tianlei's entire body was sent flying backwards. Ji-yu aimed at the other party's abdomen. His body flashed and disappeared in an instant. He reached out his hand to grab the other party and sent him flying. When Ji-yu saw this, his body flashed and he disappeared from where he was standing. The sand wrapped around Feng Tianlei, coiled around his limbs, and Ji-yu reached out and grabbed at him. A great pressure came over, crushing his bones completely. He screamed in pain. What Feng Tianlei was most proud of was his powerful recovery ability. When he sensed this, he looked at Ji-yu. Suddenly, Feng Ho came forward and cupped his fist. He said to Ji-yu, "Please let my big brother go." Ji-yu heard this and his heart softened. "Let's go." After they left, a few disciples came in anxiously. "Senior brother, the Holy Maiden is looking for you." Ji-yu found it interesting. Why was Li Sijiao looking for him? He exchanged some pleasantries with the other party. Then he walked in another direction and came in front of the other party. After seeing Ji Yu, Li Sijiao walked up to him and put her hand on his chest instead of her usual temperament of a spoiled young lady. I heard that you defeated Feng Tianlei today. The corners of Ji Yu's mouth curled into a smile. If you have something to say, just say it. Why are you looking for me? After hearing this sentence, he was stunned. The thing I told you last time, the opportunity is here. Secret territory? Yes, but to pass the secret territory, you must first obtain the qualification to take the test. Ji Yu already understood. He said calmly, then I'll go and obtain the qualification to take the test. This time, only the disciples in the top 400 are qualified to take part in the competition. So your goal is very clear. The next morning, countless disciples began to challenge other disciples for their rankings. Ji Yu went to the list and found Qing Luan. The holy maiden under Qing Luan looked at Ji Yu with vigilance. Young Master Ji Yu, the holy maiden of Qing Luan is not on the list of disciples who are qualified to challenge her. After he said this, he looked in Ji Yu's direction. He felt that Ji Yu didn't come here for anything good. Suddenly, a sense of vigilance arose in his heart. Chapter 749. Qing Luan Saintess still looked at Ji Yu with a frosty expression. Why? Do you want to have a try? Ji Yu frowned. That's naturally not possible. His eyes widened when he heard that the two of them knew each other. The saint never expected that his goddess would be so polite to Ji Yu. Saintess, this person is not simple. I think he is here to find trouble. Saintess, let me deal with him. After saying this, the two people beside him took a step forward, cupped their fists, and said to the saint in front of them, Saint, there is no need for you to deal with a new disciple. Just let us do it. The saint shook his head. It seemed that the other party was not someone to be underestimated. After saying this, the two people behind him surrounded each other and came forward. Ji Yu said indifferently, Do you still want to fight? After hearing this, the saint clenched his fists. His body flashed, and he jumped onto the stone pillar. He stood there and waved in Ji Yu's direction. The saintess closed her eyes. She silently chanted something, and the huge arena in front of her slowly rose. The array protected this small arena. The great guardian lit an incense stick with interest and inserted it into the incense burner. After the smell of the incense wafted over, the two of them jumped onto the arena. Only then did the great guardian say, The competition begins. After shouting these words, the two people beside him leaped up and stood on the arena. The two of them looked at each other, and the saint took a step forward. I'm Yunfei. Greetings, junior brother Ji Yu. Greetings, Ji Yu. After shouting this, Yunfei took a step forward and aimed in Ji Yu's direction. He formed a sword with his hands and suddenly the long sword on his back shot out. Ji Yu jumped lightly and the long sword stabbed into the ground. Apart from the sword, young master, I think senior brother Yunfei's sword is the best. Not only is his sword skill good, but his move is also the most powerful when used together with his Xian energy. Suddenly, an endless amount of Xian qi poured into the long sword. The long sword started to move violently in an instant, but Ji Yu didn't move recklessly. Instead, an endless amount of Xian qi was contained in his legs. The long sword sank heavily into the ground and instantly sank into the ground. It did not move at all. After seeing this scene, Ji Yu revealed a smile. At this moment, Yunfei's eyes fell on Ji Yu. 2 rays of sword qi appeared in his hands. He swung them forward, and the 2 rays of Xian energy sword qi suddenly flew toward Ji Yu. He directly stepped on the long sword and jumped up. His head turned downward. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Yunfei roared and the long sword returned to his hands. After getting the long sword, Yunfei suddenly stabbed it in Ji Yu's direction. Ji Yu reached out with both hands and gripped the sword between his fingers. With a light flick, he immediately flew backward. Yunfei flew backward and hit the stone wall behind him. He touched his chest and found that Ji-Yu's light blow was about to cut open his body. When he felt this surge of profound energy, he suddenly leaped up, picked up the long sword in his hand, and danced in Ji-Yu's direction. A huge Kuan-Pung sword suddenly appeared in Ji-Yu's hand. At this moment, the huge Kuan-Pung sword suddenly chopped down. On the precious weapon, there was an incomparably hot flame. The life treasure fell to the ground and exploded with a loud bang. At this moment, countless flames flew up and wrapped around Yunfei. An incomparably hot temperature started to spread. Feeling this high temperature, Yunfei said with the long sword in his hand, "You didn't expect that the elemental power that I broke through in the human profound realm was the power of water." After shouting these words, he waved the long sword. In an instant, the Xian energy in the air turned into countless water droplets. Those water droplets gradually spread over and quickly gathered together. Between rapid revolutions, in an instant those water droplets turned into a waterspout like the sea. The waterspout instantly gathered in his hand. He shouted, "Xian skill, waterspout." At this moment, the waterspout gathered together and quickly twisted. The Xian energy quickly flew out at this moment. The waterspout spread over those flames, and the flames were directly covered by the waterspout. The waterspout was deep in thought and quickly gathered together. Seeing this, Ji-Yu stretched out his hands and grabbed. The fire dragon immediately raised its head from the ground. The two of them looked at each other. Seeing this scene, Ji-Yu said indifferently, "Xian skill, dragon raising its head." After roaring these words, the fire dragon instantly lifted its head and flew in Ji-Yu's direction. The two of them quickly clashed with their palms. The two of them flew back a few steps at the same time. In between heaven and earth, there was a loud bang. Ji-Yu locked his gaze on his opponent. A ball of fire faintly appeared in his palm. The power of water element firmly suppressed Ji-Yu. Ji-Yu slapped his hands on the ground. The waterspout flew up in an instant. The power of the two water dragons actually intertwined in the air. Ji-Yu injected his Xian energy into the Kuan-Pung giant sword. He ran forward 2 steps, jumped twice, and actually arrived in front of his opponent. Seeing such a huge water dragon, a trace of fear actually appeared in Yunfei's heart. The Xian energy collided with him. His figure was sent flying. Ji-Yu picked up the prized artifact in front of him and stabbed at his heart. Seeing this, a burst of Xian energy suddenly came and shook Ji-Yu away. Yunfei's elder brother, Brother Yun, said indifferently, "Kid, this is just a competition between fellow disciples. Why do you want to kill?" After hearing this, the corners of Ji-Yu's mouth curled into a smile. "Are you kidding? Just now, you were the ones who wanted to kill me. Now you're saying this to me." After hearing this, he snorted coldly. Ji-Yu picked up the Kuan-Pung giant sword beside him and swung it forward heavily. At this moment, a water dragon quickly turned around and let out a furious roar. The water dragon let out a furious roar. It flew over and swallowed him whole. Yunfei, who was in the middle of the water dragon, had yet to catch his breath. At this moment, bubbles kept coming from the water dragon. Seeing this, Brother Yun clenched his fists tightly. "Brat, how dare you!" After shouting these words, his body suddenly flashed, and he instantly appeared in front of Ji-Yu. He slashed his sword in the direction of Ji-Yu. The two swords suddenly collided. His body flashed back, and he fixed his eyes on Ji-Yu. In a short moment, the two of them had exchanged hundreds of moves. Both of them retreated. Ji-Yu said indifferently, "Xian's skill, raging inferno." At this moment, the fire dragon shot out rapidly. The two of them hit each other with their palms. The fire dragon let out a loud roar. It was forced to retreat, and the other party fixed his eyes on Ji-Yu. "Ji-Yu, I advise you to come over obediently." After saying this, the two of them looked at each other. His body flashed, and he instantly appeared in front of Ji-Yu. He punched a circle in the direction of Ji-Yu. The fist landed on Ji-Yu, and Ji-Yu was suddenly sent flying. Jiyu took 2 steps forward and fell back a few steps. He fixed his eyes on Jiyu. Jiyu said indifferently, "Raging inferno." After roaring these words, countless fire dragons burst out in an instant. The flames burned their bodies, and in an instant, their bodies were set ablaze by the raging fire. Big Brother Yun immediately panicked. When he saw this, he took 2 steps back. He grabbed the air with both hands. Instantly, the long sword shot up and danced in the sky. It turned into hundreds of long swords and fell in the direction of Jiyu. At the same time, Jiyu's water dragon power also slowly rose into the air. At this moment, the water dragon formed a pool on the ground. At this moment, Big Brother Yun slowly fell in the direction of the ground. Suddenly, he frowned in his heart. Jiyu suddenly swung out her precious weapon. It flew into the air instantly. The Koan Prung sword turned into countless huge swords. At this moment, the huge sword was wrapped in flames. It fell like a meteor. Boom, boom, boom. 3 loud sounds were heard. The Koan Prung sword that was wrapped in flames started to vibrate on the ground. At this moment, the flames started to spread in all directions. In the midst of the explosion, the flames started to burn. The surrounding flames shook violently. He fell to the ground, and a trace of blood flowed out of his mouth. Big Brother Yun never expected that he would also lose to Jiyu today. It was only then that Jiyu waved her hand, and the 2 of them flew backwards. They hit the Qi shield. At this moment, a loud sound was heard from the Qi shield. Qing Luan smiled slightly. "Your strength is indeed not bad. That's it." After saying this, he retreated. Jiyu closed her eyes and said indifferently, "It's over." The 2 of them looked at each other and didn't know what to say. Jiyu said indifferently, "Thank you, Saintess." A token was handed to Jiyu. "Then, the battle for the Mystic Realm will begin next month. Everyone go back." After saying this, they looked at each other and didn't say anything. They just returned to their respective courtyards. Ever since Jiyu defeated everyone in the courtyard, Jiyu became the most famous disciple in Diyuan. Chapter 750. Jiyu's senior brother is back. Jiyu's senior brother is back. In the courtyard, loud cheers came one after another. They had already heard about Jiyu's one-on-one challenge today. After hearing about Jiyu's strength, their eyes were full of envy. Jiyu said indifferently, "What do you want?" After hearing this, the 2 of them looked at each other and said to Jiyu with a smile, "Haha, we want senior brother to take care of our business. You know, we are all good-for-nothing senior brothers." After saying this, the 2 of them looked at each other. Seeing this scene, Jiyu slowly took a step forward and said indifferently, "Since you think of me as your big brother, it's natural for me to take care of you." When the 2 of them heard Jiyu's words, they couldn't help but feel happy. They led Jiyu to the side and led her to the room beside them. They saw a long spear, a precious weapon, placed on the shelf. Jiyu reached out and touched the spear in front of her. She couldn't help but gasp. What a precious weapon! In an instant, the people around her became restless. In the blink of an eye, they couldn't help but reach out their hands, wanting to take the precious weapon in front of them. Seeing the fanatical emotions in their eyes, Jiyu nodded slightly and said indifferently, "That's good." Seeing Jiyu's approval, they put away the precious weapon. Early the next morning, in the square of Tianyi Gate, many disciples came out and yawned. They were all young masters from various aristocratic families. Although they had long-cut ties with the aristocratic families, their families would still send money and spirit stones. It was not a problem for them to make a living. However, some families had long been finished, such as Jiyu's disciples. They could only rely on their own abilities to make a living. They put the precious weapons on the ground. Suddenly, a person waved a fan and came forward with 2 people. "Isn't that Li Fu and Zhang Fei?" "Yes, senior brother Zhang Reng. It's them." Zhang Reng furrowed his brows and went to the front of the crowd's booth. Ji was still sleeping at the back of the square when she suddenly felt some people in front of her making a ruckus. She slowly opened her eyes. Li Fu and Zhang Fei were not weak, but for some reason, when they looked at the person in front of them, fear appeared in their eyes. Ji said indifferently, "Where did this mosquito come from? It's so noisy." Hearing this, Zhang Rang, who was still laughing, widened his eyes. "Brat, who are you talking about?" The two disciples in front of him said, "This is the last disciple of the three protectors. His status is extraordinarily high. You guys want to taint him?" Seeing this scene, Zhang Fei and Li Fu both clenched their fists. Ji said indifferently, "Do you know Sword Young Master? He's just a watchdog. Are you the one who defeated him?" Ji did not say anything. "Li Fu, if you are so cowardly, how can you survive here?" Hearing this, Li Fu clenched his fists. Ji's words struck a chord in his heart. That's right, he no longer had the protection of his family. If he was still so timid now, he would be in deep trouble. Then what did he count for? After hearing this, he leaped up and instantly formed a life treasure in his hand. "Senior brother, I wonder if we can exchange blows?" After hearing this sentence, the two of them looked at each other. When Li Fu made his move, the person beside him immediately said, "Haha, if you want to fight with senior brother Zhang, you have to go through me first. I'm Mu Yi." The two of them jumped up and stood together. On the square, many people gathered and looked at each other. Mu Yi suddenly made his move and hammered the ground with both hands. Boom! There was a loud sound. Profound energy appeared in the surroundings and shot forward rapidly at this moment. At this moment, the two balls of flames hit Mu Yi's body. Mu Yi was instantly sent flying. Seeing this, Mu Er couldn't help but sigh. "I didn't expect Li Fu to be so capable. Let me have a go at you." His arms thickened in an instant and the protective aura around him formed a giant hammer. Mu Er swung the hammer in his hand and smashed it heavily on the ground. Boom! Accompanied by a loud bang, the ground instantly exploded. At this moment, the dark force gathered together and shot out rapidly. That profound energy light wave hit his body. After he was hit, his whole body flew out. Li Fu was hit by the hammer and landed on the ground, not far away. He spat out a mouthful of blood. He fixed his gaze on Ji. Seeing this, Ji said indifferently, "Be careful." Zhang Fei jumped up. "Senior brother, let me help you." "Ha! True Dragon of Dark Energy." Previously, they had used the True Dragon of Dark Energy together with a few other disciples, but now, he was the only one using it. At this moment, the profound energy True Dragon let out a roar. It danced in the air. With a twist of its body, it turned into a ferocious dragon and swooped down. It reached out with its claws and grabbed at Mu Er. Mu Er retreated. The hammer on his body kept hitting the True Dragon of Dark Energy in front of him. It fell like a meteor. At this moment, the meteor wrapped around Ji. Ji turned around and disappeared from the spot. After a while, Ji walked to the center of the square. Quite a few people had already seen this exciting competition. They couldn't help but cheer. "Good." It was unknown who took the lead to shout. Ji said indifferently, "Mu Er, you're not my match yet. Go down." Mu Er wanted to laugh at her. After all, he had just sent Zhang Fei, who had used the True Dragon of Dark Energy, flying. After hearing her words, he took 2 steps forward. Mu Er's energy turned into a hammer and slammed it on the ground. Countless dark energy spikes suddenly expanded and shot up from the ground. The spikes shot forward and arrived in front of Ji in an instant. At the same time, Ji's protective aura shield appeared in front of him. But even so, Mu Er's spikes had already sunk into the protective energy. The protective energy gradually flew into her body. Seeing this, Ji said indifferently, "Dark technique, Iron Rock Rain." Ding. Host used Iron Rock Rain. Experience gained, 1/999. At this moment, the rain of metal fell down. He stretched out his hands, wanting to block above his head. Suddenly, he was shocked. Help! After roaring out these words, Yi Zichen was stunned. The rain of iron and stone fell on his body. Mu-Er let out a cry of agony as the person behind him slowly walked forward. Zhang Reng said indifferently, "What a piece of trash." He waved his hand to the side, and Mu-Er was instantly pulled up by an invisible force and flung to the other side. He fell heavily on the ground. He spat out a mouthful of blood. He looked at Ji Yu and said, "Let's see how strong you are. You can fight to a draw with sword, young master." After saying that, a faint purple light appeared on his body. Zhang Reng was actually an expert of the 9th layer of the human profound realm. In terms of cultivation realm, he had already won against Ren Lai. He waved his hand casually. Mu-Er was flung away. At this moment, the sand and stones on the ground floated into the air. At this moment, the stone slabs in the air cracked open, forming the shape of spikes. He waved his hand heavily. At this moment, the earthen and gravel spikes shot forward. His Gangqi couldn't stop them at all. They broke through Ji Yu's Gangqi. What a powerful Xian energy! Ji Yu thought in her heart. However, her expression didn't change. She retreated quickly. The Koan Pring giant sword appeared in her hand. Xian skill, raging fire. 4 balls of fire flew out from the Koan Pring giant sword and rotated together, turning into a giant dragon. After roaring, it flew forward. It grabbed the dragon claw. The dragon claw was swung down at this moment. A loud boom was heard. His entire body sank into the ground. He did not expect Ji Yu to have such great power. When he sensed this surge of profound energy, his eyes widened and his heart suddenly jolted. Zhang Reng's eyes widened instantly. Suddenly, countless pieces of soil appeared in the air and flew towards Ji Yu. As the huge rocks fell, he injected his Xian energy into the ground. After receiving the Xian energy, the fine sand quickly gathered in front of Ji Yu. He managed to block the incoming rock. Boom, boom, boom. 3 loud sounds were heard. At this moment, the rocks cracked. Ji Yu jumped up and held the Koan Pring giant sword in one hand. She spun it quickly and the sand dragon shot out instantly. With a roar, it collided with the sand dragon on his body. The two of them landed on the ground and looked at each other. Ji Yu said indifferently, "Good skill, but you're still far from it." He snorted coldly, "Kid, don't be so arrogant." After shouting these words, he stabbed the treasure weapon in his hand into the ground. Suddenly, a huge sand pit appeared and they fell into it. The sand pit formed in an instant. Ji Yu closed her eyes and covered her body with Xian energy. However, Ji Yu was completely submerged in the sand. He said indifferently, "You've all seen it. This is the result of offending me, Zhang Reng." Everyone was about to talk when they suddenly looked at Zhang Reng in horror. Zhang Reng was naturally very pleased. However, Mu-Yi and Mu-Er also looked at him at the same time. Chapter 751. Both Mu-Yi and Mu-Er pointed to the front in horror. Zhang Reng suddenly shouted in his heart, but he didn't shout. He abruptly turned his head. But it was too late. Ji Yu flew out of the sand pile. To be more precise, it was the fine sand that escorted Ji Yu to the surface. He suddenly opened his eyes wide. He waved his hand heavily. The sand and stones flew up in an instant and roared like a giant dragon. The sand dragon instantly shot up. After roaring, he lowered his body, flew up and crashed in front of his opponent. He immediately raised his hands. A burst of astral energy blocked in front of him. He never expected that the dragon would suddenly open its mouth and swallow him. Ji Yu waved her hand heavily and threw him into the air. Then, she threw him down heavily. She threw him to the ground. Zhang Reng spat out blood and covered his chest. He immediately ran forward and aimed the precious weapon in his hand at Ji Yu's chest and stabbed it. Seeing this scene, Ji Yu took 2 steps back. He saw this scene. the two swords collided. It was accompanied by a loud bang. The two of them separated. Ji had already broken through his energy and said to the person in front of her calmly, "It's time to go." Suddenly, there was a loud bang. At this moment, the third guardian landed on the ground and said calmly, "It's just a competition. Ji, why did you kill your fellow disciple?" Ji said calmly, "I'm not his fellow disciple. Even so, you're still in the Tianyi Palace. So you know what you should do now." After saying this, the two of them looked at each other. At this moment, Ji quickly stepped back and looked at the people in front of her. Ji said calmly, "In that case, as long as he compensates us for today's losses, it will be fine. It's just magnetite. How much is it? Just give it to me." Zhang Rang clenched his fists tightly. He hadn't expected that he would have to compensate both his wife and profound stones today. When he thought of this, he fished out a small storage ring from his bosom. There are a total of 10,000 high-grade magnetite in this storage ring. Take it. After saying that, he threw the storage ring into Ji hand. Ji put the storage ring into her storage ring. After sensing this, he raised his head. Li Fu and Zhang Fei were both wrapped up. They said, "Ji senior martial brother is really powerful. He actually defeated the three protectors' disciples." As the three protectors took Zhang Rang away, he suddenly slapped his palm on Zhang Rang's body. Zhang Rang's heart was bitter beyond words, but he didn't dare to say a word. He said faintly, "Master, it really wasn't my fault. That kid is really sinister. I didn't expect that a little Ji junior martial brother could make you so cowardly." After saying this, the two of them looked at each other. Suddenly, the two people beside them walked up at this moment. Ji said faintly, "Be careful. We have to be careful." Li Fu and Zhang Fei also thought that Ji junior martial brother was right, so they looked at each other and escorted Ji junior martial brother to the pit behind them. After seeing this scene, Ji junior martial brother suddenly opened his eyes wide. A note was inserted into the pillar of his room. Li Fu said, "That kid must be unconvinced and wants to fight with you in the back mountain." Ji junior martial brother smiled faintly. "Didn't he send himself to me?" After hearing this, Li Fu thought for a while. "Senior martial brother, you'd better not go. If you want to go, can't you inform the holy maiden?" Thinking of this, he took a deep breath and opened his eyes wide in an instant. After thinking for a while, he stood up and said faintly, "Be careful." Ji junior martial brother nodded, turned around and disappeared in an instant. At this time, there was a swaying sound in the air. A few people flew around, and several sounds of rising and falling were heard. Ji junior martial brother looked to the side, and he quickly looked to the side. There were a lot of mysterious herbs and stones in the back mountain, but there were also a lot of demonic beasts here, so there were often some disciples of the Tianyi Palace who would invite others to the back mountain when they encountered something unpleasant. If something happened, they could blame it on the demonic beast. At this time, they approached Ji junior martial brother. Zhang Rang and more than 10 disciples stood in front of Ji junior martial brother. The Holy Maiden ceremony hasn't been decided yet, so even the Holy Maiden behind you can't help you. A smile appeared on Zhang Rang's face, and he looked in Ji junior martial brother's direction with a playful smile. In an instant, the people beside him suddenly moved, and in the blink of an eye, they flew in front of Ji junior martial brother. More than 10 people surrounded Ji junior martial brother. Countless flags were inserted in front of Ji junior martial brother. They looked at each other as if they were thinking of something. After landing on the ground, they looked at each other. Ji junior martial brother said indifferently, "You want the formation?" "Humph, the Heavenly Dipper formation." After roaring these words, in an instant, a row of stars appeared on the ground. 7 stars appeared on the ground, and a small circle of light appeared on the outside. Seeing this scene, Ji junior martial brother said indifferently, "Kill!" After roaring out these words, The surrounding people suddenly felt as if something was quickly binding their legs from head to toe. He sucked in a breath of cold air. He never expected that he would make such a big mistake. He took a deep breath. You win. After saying these words, those people jumped up at the same time and landed on the ground. They raised their hands, and the long swords completely wrapped Gu Junior Marshall Brother. Gu Junior Marshall Brother said indifferently, "Kill." After shouting these words, those treasures flew up at the same time and danced in the sky. They burst out in all directions. They were inserted into the ground, and the surroundings were connected. In an instant, countless thunder and lightning appeared on the ground. At this moment, the thunder and lightning spread in all directions. Those 10 people screamed and fell to the ground one after another. After seeing this scene, Gu Junior Marshall Brother stood up. He looked in the direction of Gu Junior Marshall Brother. Gu Junior Marshall Brother said indifferently, "And you?" Zhang Rang looked at Gu Junior Marshall Brother's smug face. He was instantly enraged and his legs moved like the wind. There is still the formation left by the sect master in the square. It is not easy to use some magic skills. Gu Junior Marshall Brother, you are really unlucky today. After shouting these words, they instantly came in front of Gu Junior Marshall Brother. After seeing this scene, Gu Junior Marshall Brother gasped. He raised his hands, and the magic power in the air gathered. At this moment, the magic power was injected in front of him. After seeing this scene, Gu Junior Marshall Brother slowly took a step forward. In an instant, the giant Koan Pring sword in his hand became incomparably huge. He slashed down heavily, and a loud boom was heard. The sound of the explosion shook the surroundings. Gu Junior Marshall Brother flew in front of Gu Junior Marshall Brother and stabbed him with his sword. Gu Junior Marshall Brother suddenly bounced off his long sword. His body flashed and he instantly left the place. After a moment, he appeared behind him. "How can you be so fast?" There was a trace of unwillingness in his eyes, but what could he do? His body stiffened and he was rooted to the ground. He wanted to move, but he couldn't. Gu Junior Marshall Brother picked up the treasure weapon beside him. The sword landed heavily on his head. Zhang Rang let out a scream, but he had no choice but to accept this result. Gu Junior Marshall Brother put away the giant Koan Pring sword and at the same time, cut open the skin on his body. At this moment, the smell of blood wafted out. Smelling this smell, at this moment, the Xian beasts at the side all came forward and looked in the direction of Gu Junior Marshall Brother. When Gu Junior Marshall Brother saw this scene, he took 2 steps back. Those Xian beasts bit Zhang Rang's body. At this moment, the remaining Xian beasts also surrounded Gu Junior Marshall Brother. An 8th-grade Xian wolf couldn't wait any longer. It directly pounced in the direction of Gu Junior Marshall Brother. Gu Junior Marshall Brother took 2 steps back. After that, he picked up the treasure weapon beside him and stabbed at the Xian wolf's stomach. The Xian wolf howled in grief and stopped breathing. Suddenly, a soft female voice rang out. Gu Junior Marshall Brother suddenly flew to the top of the tree. Yen Yuro landed on the ground. The female disciples beside her cried out in alarm. "Isn't this the disciple of the 3 protectors?" Yen Yuro merely glanced at him coldly. "He should have died long ago. Saintess, there's no one around now. I'm afraid that everyone will misunderstand us. There's no need to worry. Let's go to the Jade Wall Spring and wash off the dust on our bodies." After saying this, the beautiful figures disappeared. Gu Junior Marshall Brother killed a few more Xian beasts. Just as he was about to return, a sharp explosion suddenly came from the direction of the Jade Wall Spring. Gu Junior Marshall Brother jumped up and down and arrived at that place. After seeing this scene, he looked in that direction and thought for a moment. The few naked girls couldn't help but scream when they saw Gu Junior Marshall Brother. Gu Junior Marshall Brother cupped his hands and said, "I just passed by this place. My apologies." After hearing Ji-yu Jr. Marshall Brothers' words, Yen-yuro said indifferently, "Then, why are you still looking?" Chapter 752. Ji-yu suddenly realized something and covered her eyes with her hands. Yen-yuro carefully looked at her hands to make sure that there were no gaps between her fingers. Then, she put on her clothes. "Just now, I heard a loud noise coming from this direction, so I hurried over. Now that I see that the Saintess is fine, I will leave immediately." After hearing these words, they turned their heads abruptly. They set their eyes on Ji-yu and slowly approached Ji-yu. The few maids behind them said, "You want to leave now?" The maids snorted coldly. In the blink of an eye, they appeared behind Ji-yu and blocked Ji-yu's path with their weapons. Ji-yu cupped her hands and said, "Saintess, this isn't good." The head maid said coldly, "How dare you? The person in front of you is the Saintess, not someone else." In a flash, they appeared in front of Ji-yu and took out their weapons. "If you don't apologize today, don't even think of leaving." After saying this, the maids beside her appeared in front of Ji-yu in the blink of an eye. They lifted their heads and flew forward. Ji-yu waved her hand. Suddenly, the weapons shot out at high speed. They blocked in front of Ji-yu. With a loud clang, they were forced to retreat. Ji-yu swung the Kuan Pring giant sword heavily. Because there were plants everywhere in the back of the mountain, the Xian energy of wood was much greater. At this moment, the vines gathered together. When they wrapped around the maids, they immediately cried out in alarm. The Saintess waved her hand. At this moment, the sandstorm started blowing. At this moment, the vines broke. When he saw this, he raised the treasure tool in his hand and danced in Ji-yu's direction. The two swords collided. Only then did the two of them separate. When Yen-yuro saw that Ji-yu's Xian skill was so powerful, she couldn't help but admire her talent. "If you stay long enough under Li Sijiao, you can withdraw from there." After saying this, the two of them looked at each other and returned to their own homes. Ji-yu's figure flashed and disappeared from the spot. Yen-yuro's maid rubbed her slender legs and said to Li Sijiao in a coquettish manner, "It hurts." Li Sijiao touched her forehead. "Don't worry. When the time comes, he will regret it." After saying this, the two of them walked forward and glanced at the front. Dang, 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 the bell rang 3 times. Everyone gathered in the middle of the square. How will this year's competition develop in the back mountain? After hearing this, they surrounded them. Ji-yu and the others walked out and went to the back of the mountain. The head enforcer announced the rules. They had to find 20 high-grade demonic beast cores. Furthermore, they could wantonly snatch the demonic beast cores from others. The 3 people with the most demonic beast cores would be the winners. Many people had already formed an alliance. Although this alliance would eventually break, they could still work together. Along with the sound of woo-woo, they gathered together. In the blink of an eye, they appeared in the back of the mountain. Ji-yu's eyes widened as he looked all around. Because Ji-yu didn't have the qualifications to enter the back of the mountain, Ji-yu chose to act alone. She directly ran into the back of the mountain. However, after Ji-yu entered, a few people appeared behind her. They looked at each other. "The Saintess ordered us to capture him." After hearing this, the two of them instantly disappeared. They landed on the ground and took out their artifact. Then, they also rushed into the back of the mountain. Ji-yu stopped in her tracks. Abruptly turning around, he pulled out his treasured weapon and looked around vigilantly. Those people landed on the ground and charged in Ji-yu's direction. Ji-yu jumped up. Those people said faintly, "You offended the Saintess. Why didn't you change your sect? Even if you die here today, you deserve it." Mystical skill, Dragon Wave Rush. After shouting "Ahoo," one of the saints stomped on the ground. The mystical force in his body suddenly surged. In an instant, the mystical force quickly gathered together. Flying forward, Ji-yu saw this scene and suddenly raised her hand. Her fist collided with the dragon head formed by the mystical force. Following this loud sound, his fist made a cracking sound. At this moment, the sound of bones breaking could be heard. He looked at Ji. After taking a deep breath, he flew up and came in front of Ji. He swung his fist heavily. The two of them exchanged thousands of punches in the air. Ji landed on the ground. Her opponent found that he could not gather his mystical force to protect himself. After taking a deep breath, Ji appeared behind him in a flash. She hugged his back with both hands and fell heavily to the ground. The sound of bones breaking came from that person's body. At this moment, the people beside him also flew forward. The two of them used their mystical force to clash. Ji quickly dealt with the people in front of her. She flew inside with a few leaps. At this moment, many mystical beasts raised their heads and roared. They rushed in Ji's direction. Ji punched one of the mystical beasts. That mystical beast flew a few steps back. At this moment, it raised its head and roared at the sky. Suddenly, a few white-haired mystical lions jumped out. If other people saw this, they would definitely run away without looking back. However, Ji was an exception. He looked forward. At this moment, those white-haired mystical beasts looked in Ji's direction. Those white-haired mystical beasts suddenly jumped down at this moment. They roared and pounced in Ji's direction. Ji stretched out his hands and grabbed the white tiger in front of him. At this moment, that mystical beast suddenly flew out. Ji hit the giant tree. At this moment, the giant tree suddenly collapsed. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this scene, two mystical beasts suddenly raised their heads. At this moment, they pounced forward. Ji jumped up and kicked those mystical beasts. Those mystical beasts fell to the ground one after another. He wanted to roar but could not. When he saw this scene, Ji suddenly turned around and kicked a few of the mystical beasts, causing them to fall to the ground in a mouthful. The giant Kuan Pring's sword in his hand suddenly stabbed into a mystical beast. At this moment, the mystical beast's inner core flew out. Ji stretched out his hand and grabbed the elixir in his hand. The two mystical beasts beside him saw that their companion was killed and the elixir was taken away. They became angrier. With a roar, they flew in front of Ji. Ji suddenly turned around and waved the giant Kuan Pring's sword in his hand. Boom! Another loud sound was heard. At this moment, that mystical beast retreated quickly. After landing on the ground, it instantly flew to those mystical beasts. At this moment, the precious weapon stabbed down. A few more inner cores of mystical beasts appeared in his hand. After storing those inner cores in the storage ring, Ji disappeared on the spot. After a while, he jumped a few steps and ran in another direction. However, he had the inner cores with him. The smell attracted many mystical beasts. He saw this scene. Those dozens of mystical beasts landed on the ground at this moment. They raised their heads and looked in the direction of Ji. In an instant, those mystical beasts pounced on him. After seeing this scene, he jumped up and kicked out. Those mystical beasts fell into a pool of blood at this moment. However, these mystical beasts were not weak. Suddenly, 10 people walked out and looked in the direction of Ji. They said indifferently, "Senior brother Ji, you're really something. Why don't you hand over those elixirs?" A few people said at the same time. After seeing this scene, they smiled. Senior brother Ji has consumed a lot of mystical qi. We'll help you share the burden. After saying these 2 sentences, they landed on the ground and took 2 steps forward. When Ji saw this scene, his body flashed and disappeared from where he was standing. In the blink of an eye, they arrived behind Ji. When Ji saw this, several people closed in on Ji in the blink of an eye. They were closing in on Ji. They raised the precious weapons in their hands and attacked Ji. Ji blocked a few attacks and flew forward. He said boldly, "Look, aren't there a few inner cores of mystical beasts in front of you?" Seeing this, they all sneered. "These elixirs are nothing. If you obediently hand over those inner cores, we'll spare you." The corners of their mouths curled into a smile. When Ji saw this, he disappeared from where he stood. Ji took 2 steps forward. The light under his body suddenly lit up. When those people arrived before Ji, Ji turned around and instantly disappeared from his original spot. He brandished his prized artifact, and the prized artifacts beside him followed suit. Those people in front of him flew backward. Ji picked up the treasure artifact in front of her. After forcing them to retreat, Ji's body suddenly flashed and disappeared from the spot. After disappearing, Ji flew in another direction. He landed on a tree trunk not far away. Chapter 753. Ji stood on the tree trunk and looked down. Those people landed on the ground at this moment. Where on earth did that guy go? They looked at each other and then looked around in other directions. At this moment, the leader said, "Search." After receiving the order, the people beside him started to search around. After hearing this, the people beside him landed on the ground. They took out their weapons and started to search around. Suddenly, a few ninth-grade inferior Xian beasts poked their heads out and looked in front of them. A low roar slowly came from the Xian beast's throat. They raised their heads abruptly. The leader shouted angrily, "Get into formation." After shouting these words, they came to stand in front of Ji. The remaining few people came to stand in front of Ji. They stood in the same place and took a step forward. The people in front of them raised their heads and looked in front. After seeing this scene, they slowly retreated. They also formed a formation according to the constellations in the sky. At this moment, the Xian energy in the air slowly fell and suddenly exploded on the ground. At this moment, the 7 constellations projected starlight. The Xian beasts suddenly pounced forward and hit the light wall. After the collision, they fell to the ground. Seeing this, Ji took 2 steps forward. There was a look of interest in her eyes. Seeing this, the people in front of her suddenly turned around. When they saw this scene, they swung their fists at the same time and hit the light wall. Punch after punch, they swung their fists. At this moment, those people raised their heads and looked in front of them. Right at this moment, several Xian beasts roared and pounced forward. They opened their bloody mouths and bit down on the starlight barrier. When they saw this scene, they immediately rushed forward. Ji's body flashed and disappeared in an instant. Ji took 2 steps forward. The Xian beasts broke the light wall, and those people took 2 steps forward. They raised the weapons in their hands and ran in the direction of Ji. They jumped up and waved their long swords in the direction of Ji. Ji turned around and cut down the weapons in her hand. Ji was now exposed. This made them excited. Ji picked up the precious tool beside him. In the blink of an eye, he landed on the ground with a few leaps. When they saw this scene, they all rushed toward Ji at the same time. He kicked out and hit one of them. It landed on one of the people, and a Xian beast suddenly jumped down. After seeing this scene, the Xian beast immediately became excited. It did not expect that flesh and blood would appear in front of it as soon as it smelled the smell of the internal elixir. In an instant, it opened its bloody mouth and bit down on the other party's body. The man let out a miserable shriek. At this moment, blood spurted out in all directions. Blood dripped to the ground. Only then did the people look up. The ferocity of the Xian beasts made all the people present lose the desire to compete. They only wanted to save their own lives. At this moment, the Xian beasts turned around and opened their bloody mouths. Countless balls of light suddenly gathered in their mouths. At this moment, those beams of light shot out explosively. At this moment, those light beams hit the ground. It was accompanied by a loud rumbling sound. The people around were suddenly sent flying. After seeing this scene, Ji took 2 steps forward. Those Xian beasts landed on the ground and rushed in the direction of those disciples. Fortunately, the formation of the Tianyi sect was indeed powerful. They stood back to back, gathered together, and stabbed their precious weapons into the ground. Boom! Another ray of starlight suddenly lit up. At this moment, the people beside them rushed forward. When they saw this scene, they flew up, ran 2 steps forward, turned around, and quickly turned their bodies. At the same time, they swung their fists. Another few Xian beasts retreated quickly. In a flash, they disappeared on the spot. In the blink of an eye, they appeared on those people. They raised their hands and stabbed their weapons. The Xian beasts let out a wail and saw that 7 or 8 Xian pills of the highest grade had appeared. The few of them were overjoyed, and they flew to Ji Yu's side. Seeing this scene, Ji Yu said calmly, "Everyone, it's your turn now. You should hand over your weapons." After she said this, the Xian beasts picked up the Xian pills in their hands as if they were their own. In a flash, they came in front of Ji Yu. They raised their hands and approached Ji Yu. In an instant, they dropped the weapons in their hands and came forward. They approached Ji Yu. After hearing a loud noise, Ji Yu instantly disappeared from where he was standing. After a while, she came behind them. Ji Yu hit one of them on the head with a heavy punch. That person felt the pain at the back of his head and screamed in pain. He fell to the ground. Ji Yu said, "What do you want to do?" After hearing this, a few people beside him stepped forward. He raised the treasure in his hand and swung it in a circle, causing the man to fall to the ground in an instant. At this moment, a few people beside him came forward. "Senior Ji Yu, we're from the same sect. Why do you have to force us?" The leading disciple had no choice but to ask. After hearing the bustling news, they took 2 steps forward. In a flash, they disappeared on the spot and rushed in the direction of Ji Yu. Ji Yu took out her weapon and slashed it at the 2 people in front of her. The treasure weapon slashed down and the 2 of them coughed up blood. A trace of blood flowed from the corners of their mouth. After seeing this scene, Ji Yu raised her hand. The 2 people in front of her looked at each other and then slowly stepped back. They stood in front of Ji Yu. Ji Yu said indifferently, "When you asked me for the things just now, that's not what you said." They gritted their teeth and said, "Ji Yu, you've gone too far. If we hadn't used up so much Xian Qi, we would have taken your life now." As soon as one of them finished speaking, the other 2 approached Ji Yu. When they saw this scene, they turned around abruptly. They stabbed their swords in the direction of Ji Yu. Ji Yu's body flashed and disappeared on the spot. After a while, Ji Yu picked up the weapon in front of her and suddenly swung it behind her. At this moment, the weapons collided with each other. Only then did the 2 people separate from each other. Ji Yu said indifferently, "Now, it's your turn." After saying this, he stood up and disappeared on the spot. A few people ran forward at the same time. They flew up and appeared in front of Ji Yu in an instant. At the same time, they gathered a strong Xian Qi in their palms. At this moment, their palms slammed down heavily in the direction of Ji Yu. Ji Yu leaped into the air and gathered the dark force in her hands at this moment. At this moment, the Xian Qi collided with the ground. At this moment, the flames gathered in the air, and then fell down at this moment. He picked up the weapon beside him and slashed it down heavily on the flames in front of him. At this moment, the flames fell down. At this moment, they looked to the side. At this moment, a few people took a step forward. After seeing this scene, they raised their hands. Those people said at the same time, "Take Ji Yu down." After saying this, they jumped down and pulled out their weapons, forcing Ji Yu's direction. After seeing this scene, Ji Yu turned around abruptly. When those disciples saw that their leader was killed, they felt fear. A hint of fear suddenly appeared in their hearts. They leaped up at the same time and landed on their bodies. They leaped down and approached Ji Yu. Ji Yu raised the weapon in her hands and swung it forward heavily. In an instant, a powerful purple light of profound energy appeared in the sky and crashed into their bodies. They were suddenly sent flying. No way. Ji Yu suddenly felt that she had broken through the opening of the bottle. Suddenly, endless fear rose in her heart. She jumped up and after a few ups and downs, she turned around. At this moment, the giant Kuan Pring sword slashed down heavily. Xian's skill, city burning fire. At this moment, countless balls of flames suddenly burst out. Those flames quickly gathered together at this moment. Those flames fell to the ground. Boom, boom, boom. 3 loud sounds were heard. The flames quickly swallowed everything around them. At this moment, those flames swallowed them up instantly. They turned into white bones. After seeing this scene, Ji immediately found a place with sufficient xian qi and sat down. She closed her eyes. Then she quickly operated the sky-splitting skill. Originally, the sky-splitting skill was an evolved xian skill. That xian skill rotated quickly. The xian qi rotated quickly and soon fell into her dantian. At this moment, the dantian rotated quickly and looked like a golden core. The xian qi was quickly injected into the golden core. Ji suddenly opened her eyes wide and a trace of purple light appeared on her body. She had reached the beginning of LV7 Human Profound Realm. Chapter 754. At this moment, the wind began to blow. At this moment, the power of frost began to solidify in the air. While sensing the dark force in the air, it began to condense. The wind began to fall. At this moment, the wind in the air began to solidify rapidly. A demonic beast with wings on its back stood in the air. His eyes immediately looked down. After seeing this scene, the demonic beast opened its eyes at this moment. It flapped the wings on its back. All of a sudden, the wings on its back began to flap rapidly. At this moment, the whirlwind began to form in the air and began to dance. At this moment, the wings began to flap. 2 balls of dark force descended. 2 balls of purple light collided with Ji's gang energy. Ji had originally intended to deal with the person in front of him. Unexpectedly, the dark force in his body began to gather rapidly at this moment. A huge amount of dark force was produced in his body. The panic in his heart began to spread rapidly at this moment. The ball of dark force quickly wrapped around him. This meant that he was going to continue to break through. Why did it have to choose this moment? Ji was unable to move at this moment. He began to panic. However, in the next moment, he suddenly jumped up. He stood up. He turned his gaze to the front. At this moment, the dark force in his body began to gather rapidly in his palms. He injected the dark force into his body. His soul flew out of his body. He collided with the demonic beast. The demonic beast probably did not notice Ji's appearance. It began to roar. At this moment, it flew forward and flapped its wings continuously. However, the soul did not have a physical body. This mental strength was as strong as gang energy. This caused the demonic beast to feel incomparably anxious. It continued to roar. At the same time, it flapped its wings continuously in an attempt to break through the barrier in front of it. However, the barrier was simply too powerful for them. As soon as the demon beast broke through, its body flickered as it flew up into the air. Its wings flapped, and countless feathers transformed into sharp arrows. They fell down. Those feathers pierced Ji's gang energy. Ji's heart was dripping with sweat. His dark force was gradually increasing. A system notification sounded in his mind. She broke through again. Ji was now a true expert of the 8th level of the human profound realm. The dark force in the surroundings dissipated in an instant. Ji removed her protective aura and said to the demonic beast in front of her, "What you did to me just now, it should be my turn." When the demonic beast sensed the terrifying aura from Ji, it didn't show any fear. To humans, the inner core of a demonic beast was the best tonic. For demonic beasts, wasn't the flesh and blood of humans the best type of nourishment? With a flap of its wings, the demonic beast arrived in front of Ji in the blink of an eye. Ji punched out and collided with the fists of the demon beast. The wings on their backs flapped. At this moment, those feathers fluttered in the air. They turned into sharp blades and flew in front of Ji. Ji disappeared from her body in an instant. In the blink of an eye, she jumped onto the feathers and gathered her hands in her hands. Those feathers instantly shot out in another direction. The feathers stuck on the body of the demonic beast. The demonic beast roared and fell to the ground. Ji took out the inner core. She counted and found that she had exactly 20 elixirs. But she was alarmed. She disappeared on the spot in an instant. A moment later, a ball of dark force appeared in her hands. That ball of dark force fell to the ground at this moment. With a loud bang, those flames swallowed the surroundings. That demonic beast let out a wail. At this moment, it fell and collided with each other. They stood up in an instant and looked forward. At this moment, those people flashed and arrived in front of Jiyu. Jiyu looked at the two flying dark beasts. He suddenly turned around and swung his fist, hitting the people around him. At this moment, they suddenly raised their heads and flew out in an instant. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared on the spot and flew into the air. At this moment, the giant sword of the Kuan-Pring was swung. Two balls of lightning burst out in an instant. They collided with their bodies. At this moment, they fell rapidly. At this moment, the lightning began to spread in all directions. After a short moment, the power of the lightning began to flicker and disappear. He swung the giant sword of the Kuan-Pring. At this moment, the giant sword of the Kuan-Pring flew forward. In the blink of an eye, it arrived in front of Jiyu. He slapped his palm forward heavily. The giant sword of the Kuan-Pring collided with each other, and that precious weapon was inserted into the ground. After seeing this scene, Jiyu suddenly leaped up and reached out with both hands. At this moment, in the blink of an eye, the long sword arrived in front of Jiyu. As Jiyu leaped up, Jiyu suddenly turned around and hit the back of their heads with the hammer. Their bodies went limp and they fell to the ground. Jiyu said indifferently, "I'll accept your inner elixirs." Seeing so many inner elixirs, Jiyu disappeared on the spot after a few leaps. After a few leaps, he leaped up and landed on the ground twice. He stood on the spot. He raised his head and looked around. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat. In the blink of an eye, those people flew to the ground. They took out precious weapons from their hands. "Senior brother Jiyu, may I know how many inner elixirs you have with you?" After asking, Jiyu's lips curled into a smile. He flew forward and brandished the life treasure. The life treasure instantly expanded. "Why? Do you want to lend me a few elixirs?" After hearing this, he raised his head, and the two people beside him looked at each other. In a flash, they disappeared on the spot. After a while, they raised their heads at the same time and looked in the direction of Jiyu. They picked up their precious weapons and came to Jiyu in the blink of an eye. They turned around, and when they saw this scene, they immediately raised their heads. Jiyu stood up. In the blink of an eye, he took 2 steps forward. In an instant, the people on both sides flew up. At this moment, those flying birds were approaching Jiyu. Those disciples smiled slightly. One of them was a beast tamer. At this moment, those flying birds in the air suddenly lowered their heads and collided with each other like a plate of flaming bird. After the flaming birds scattered, the flames dissipated in an instant. At this moment, they looked at each other. Their smiles suddenly froze on their faces. At this moment, the flaming birds quickly gathered together. They were swallowed up by the giant bird in Jiyu's giant sword. After seeing this scene, they couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. In a flash, they disappeared on the spot. In the blink of an eye, their bodies flew up. After a few ups and downs, they landed on the ground. A loud rumbling sound rang out. It spread in all directions. He said calmly, "Senior brother Jiyu, we were wrong. We will leave now. Please don't remember these small mistakes of ours." After hearing this, they disappeared on the spot instantly. After a moment, they ran towards Jiyu. Jiyu immediately turned around and dashed towards Jiyu. Jiyu said calmly, "Be careful." When they heard those words, they raised their heads at that moment. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared on the spot and walked towards the other side. She raised her head. At this moment, a few people suddenly appeared and fixed their eyes on Jiyu. Jiyu smiled lightly and showed up in front of them. Seeing Jiyu did not let them go, they knew what was going on. So they put the storage ring on the ground and left respectfully. Jiyu found a place where no one was around and prepared to consolidate her state. The dark force in her dantian poured into her whole body. He stood up and 2 balls of fire shot out from his hand. Now, he no longer needed to borrow the power of the Kunpeng treasure to use this Xianqi. She suddenly became excited. Jiyu took 2 steps forward. Suddenly, the 2 people in front of her landed on the ground. They raised their heads and looked in Jiyu's direction. "Who are you?" Jiyu asked the 2 people warily. When the 2 people saw Jiyu, they said excitedly, "Please save us, senior brother." Jiyu asked in confusion. At this moment, a few figures appeared outside the door. They said slowly, "Senior brother, if you plan to spend the next few days cultivating here, it's best that you don't meddle in other people's business." After hearing this, they looked at each other and stood up. In an instant, the few people in front of her raised their heads. They flew up and landed on the ground. A treasure appeared in their hands and they waved it. The treasure came in front of Jiyu in an instant. Jiyu stretched out his hand to block the attack, and the ray of light was repelled. He took 2 steps back. A trace of blood flowed out of his mouth. The person beside him said indifferently, "Brat, I think you don't want face. Do you have to die in this mountain? Fine, I'll fulfill your wish. Kill him." The few people beside him could not wait any longer. If they did not know Jiyu's strength, they would have flown forward to kill Jiyu. Chapter 755. The precious weapon in Jiyu's hand suddenly chopped down. It collided with the other parties. Then both parties retreated. Sure enough, it's not simple. The person who attacked just now suddenly thought. He took 2 steps forward, picked up the precious weapon on the ground, and charged directly in Jiyu's direction. Seeing this, Jiyu suddenly stepped back. After taking a few steps back, he stood in place. He said lightly, "Boy, you need to be rampant." After saying this, the people around him gradually surrounded Jiyu. Jiyu threw the Kunpeng giant sword and inserted it in front of him. After the precious weapon was inserted into the ground, the surrounding thunder and lightning spread in all directions at this time. Suddenly, the people looked at each other. His figure flashed and appeared in front of Jiyu in an instant. The people looked at each other and knew that they might not be Jiyu's match. In an instant they panicked. Even the hands holding the precious weapon began to tremble. They looked at each other and stood up. The corners of Jiyu's mouth curled into a smile. He reached out his hand and punched heavily on their aura energy. The people in black spat out a mouthful of blood. They took a few steps back and turned around. In an instant they disappeared from where they were. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared in front of them. Jiyu looked at the people hiding behind the boulder and said lightly, "Come out." After saying this, the 2 of them came out and knelt on the ground. "I'm Yan Xiaowu. I'm Yan Xiaoxi. Senior brother, thank you for your help. In the future, even if there is a mountain of knives and a sea of fire, we are willing to follow you." Jiyu helped the 2 of them up. The 2 in front of him said lightly, "Senior brother, what's your name?" "Jiyu. We can achieve something together in the future." "Yes, so that we can achieve something in the future." After that, the 2 men slowly walked towards Jiyu. Seeing this, Jiyu said, "It's time for us to go back." The Yen brothers followed behind Jiyu. In the blink of an eye, they took a step forward. After seeing this, they looked at each other. His heart immediately became excited. His body had fused with such a strong, profound energy. They were also excited that they could become the underlings of such a powerful person. Jiyu landed on the ground and took 2 steps forward. In the blink of an eye, he appeared between the 2 of them. He opened his eyes and looked in the direction of Jiyu. He returned to the square. They walked to the center of the square and the rest of the people came back one after another. However, there were only 2 people who were uninjured like Jiyu. One of them was Sword Prince. The other was the last disciple of the Tianyi Palace's great guardian, Guan Yu. Guan Yu closed his eyes and stood in place. Many female disciples looked in his direction. The great guardian walked out of the hall door. He said lightly, "The Saintess competition will be held tomorrow. Among the 12 saintesses, whoever can become the saintess will be able to enter the secret realm with the top 3 in the trial. The saintess ceremony? After hearing this, the 3 of them raised their heads at the same time and looked forward. Li Sijiao clenched her fists. That night, everyone sheltered in front of their saintesses. They were afraid that something bad would happen to the saintess and cause bad things to happen the next day. Ji Yu sat outside the hall on a rocking chair, looking very calm. After drinking a mouthful of wine, he stood up and opened his eyes slightly. Li Sijiao sat in front of him. Ji Yu opened his eyes. She stood up and sat beside him. She said with delicate eyebrows, "Little brother, shall we play?" Ji Yu knew all too well how powerful her eyebrows were. She opened her eyes and smiled faintly. "If you gain something from this, how about you let me go?" Ji Yu smiled slightly. "You can win the title of saintess tomorrow." After saying this, they stood up and fixed their eyes on Ji Yu. Ji Yu said lightly, "If you can win the title of saintess, I can enter the secret realm and obtain the strength of the profound world realm. Maybe I can leave you. At that time, I have no opinion on whether you can fulfill the 3 conditions or not." After hearing this, he bent down and looked at Ji Yu. At this time, 2 black shadows seemed to appear in the air. Ji Yu waved her hand heavily. It turned out that there were 2 owls. Ji Yu said faintly, "You should rest quickly. The saintess ceremony is waiting for you tomorrow." After saying this, they looked at each other and stood up. The saintess felt bored and returned to her room. Ji Yu closed his eyes. Time passed quickly. He opened his eyes. At this time, 2 people in front of him walked out. At this time, they stood up and looked at the 2 people with vigilant eyes. The 2 people smiled faintly. "Senior brother, don't be nervous. We are here to invite the saintess to the ceremony." Ji Yu led the people beside him and walked in another direction. Li Sijiao, Yen Yuro, and Qing Luan looked at each other. They walked up to the stage. The great guardian stretched out his hand, and a large net of profound force suddenly sealed the square in front of him. After sealing, the other saintesses suddenly attacked the 3 people at the same time. Among the 12 people, these 3 people were the most powerful. However, Li Sijiao and the other 2 people were the most powerful. After they attacked, they instantly flew out. They turned around and landed on the ground. They took out their artifacts and ran toward Ji Yu. In an instant, they dealt with the other people. The 3 people looked at each other. After looking at each other, they instantly took a few steps forward. The 3 people attacked at the same time. Li Sijiao was a lightning elemental cultivator. In an instant, the power of lightning filled the air. Right at this moment, the power of the lightning instantly struck down. It smashed a few holes in the ground. When they saw the 3 pits, they took 2 steps forward. Ji Yu said faintly, "Not bad." Yen Yuro smiled faintly. She casually threw out a ball of raging fire. At this time, the ball of raging fire fell to the ground. The raging fire spread in all directions and burned everyone. When Ji Yu saw this, she heavily palmed. She slapped the ball of raging fire away. At this time, the 2 balls of raging fire flew backward and hit the wooden pillars. The raging fire burned the wooden pillars. At this time, the flames burned the protective energy shield in the air. Qing Luan held her artifacts and in the blink of an eye, she threw out the 2 rings. The 2 rings spun in a circle in the air. They flew back and hit the 3 people. The 2 people fell back. Qing Luan picked up the 2 rings in front of her. At this time, Li Sijiao used her artifacts and heavily swung her sword. The power of lightning suddenly burst out. Seeing the power of lightning, Qing Luan's 2 rings flew out and spun in the air. Beside her, Yen Yuro suddenly flew up and landed in the air. She quickly spun in a circle and gathered raging fire in her hands. The raging fire gathered in her hands. At this time, the raging fire flew out. Like a falling star, the raging fire hit the ground. Boom, boom, boom. A few explosive sounds rang out. Only then did they jump back 2 steps and look around. Li Sijiao frowned. The two people were clearly trying to pincer her. When she thought of this, she coldly snorted and heavily swung her sword. Another bolt of lightning fell on the ground in front of her. Then, she covered her chest. She pretended to be defeated. Seeing that Li Sijiao was defeated, Qing Luan and Yan Yuro finally relaxed and started to fight. Qing Luan swung the two rings in her hands. She flew to Yan Yuro's side. Yan Yuro was sweating profusely. She slapped her hands on the ground. In an instant, the flames gathered and formed the shape of a phoenix. In order to obtain the title of saintess, the two women had used up all the profound energy in their bodies. Although Li Sijiao had left the battlefield earlier, she had already used up all the profound energy in her body in the battle just now. Boom! With a loud explosion, the two women retreated. Their gazes were still intertwining. At this time, Li Sijiao suddenly stood up and rushed toward the two women. She actually grabbed their hair. The two women didn't have any extra profound energy in their bodies. He also grabbed her hair with a backhand grip. The situation actually turned out like this. Ji Yu and the other great disciples of the Tianyi sect were dumbfounded. They saw that the three great beauties were actually fighting like this. Many young disciples shouted excitedly. If they continued fighting like this, their clothes would probably be torn to shreds. The great protector frowned when he saw this. Li Sijiao picked up the pill that Ji Yu had given her. Immediately, a wave of profound energy began to form within her body. She then slapped her palms forward. Boom! A loud sound rang out. The two of them were sent flying at the same time. At the last moment, Li Sijiao won with a profound skill. Everyone looked in her direction. There was blood at the corner of her mouth, and there was a scratch on her face. She looked proudly at the Great Guardian in the main hall. The Great Guardian smiled faintly. Interesting. Li Sijiao won today's competition. Li Sijiao will lead Ji Yu, Guan Yu, and Sword Prince into the secret realm. Chapter 756. Yan Yuro and Qing Luan's eyes were filled with jealousy. However, there was nothing they could do. The next day, the Great Protector stood in front of a huge rock. This was a secret realm that an ancient expert built for himself before he died. A mysterious light immediately shone on the huge rock. The huge rock suddenly flew into the sky. He slowly raised his head. Li Sijiao took the lead and stepped into the secret realm. The other three quickly followed her. The secret realm was incomparably vast. However, there was only a stone tablet erected not far away. After seeing this scene, Ji Yu stepped forward. Guang Zongyuan's Realm of Life and Death. Tomb of the Flying General Li Changming. The tombstone recorded the matters of this dynasty that had never been recorded in the four great regions. Seeing this scene, Guan Yu stepped forward and dripped a drop of blood from his hand. The stone tablet suddenly emitted a ray of light. Several tens of golden armored protectors flew out from the tomb. The golden armored protector in the lead suddenly opened his eyes. Those who trespass into the secret realm will die. Following the golden armored protector's shout, those golden armored protectors suddenly flashed and arrived in front of Ji Yu. They raised their hands and lifted the huge axes in front of them. The golden axes suddenly fell down. At this moment, that golden ray of light chopped down. Countless golden rays of light suddenly fell down. Boom! 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 3 loud sounds were heard. The surrounding people were sent flying. Guan Yu was the first to appear. A long spear appeared in his hand. He began to brandish it. A roaming golden dragon swam in the air for a while before it directly fell down. That golden dragon roared and flew out. The two of them raised their hands at the same time. Their fists collided. Following that, a loud rumbling sound was heard. The two of them were sent flying at the same time. They floated in the air. At this moment, they slowly opened their eyes. He charged in Ji Yu's direction. Suddenly, their bodies flashed and they landed not far away. At this moment, the golden armored protectors scattered and floated in all directions. They threw the axes in their hands at the same time. Guan Yu's spear was like a long dragon, causing the surrounding golden armored guards to fall down one after another. After seeing this scene, his body flashed and disappeared from where he was in the blink of an eye. He looked to the other side. When the spears collided, the 12 golden armored protectors suddenly flew down. At this moment, the 5 or 6 golden armored protectors shattered into pieces. Looking at this scene, they sucked in a cold breath. At this moment, their bodies suddenly disappeared from their original positions, and they charged towards Ji-Yu. Guan Yu rushed into the crowd and stabbed out with his spear, shattering the golden armored guards one after another. Guan Yu snorted, "Have you been in disrepair for a long time?" The remaining golden armored guards flashed and suddenly appeared in front of Ji-Yu. At this moment, the golden armored guards slashed in Ji-Yu's direction. Ji-Yu smiled at Sword Young Master. "Why don't we let Sword Young Master make a move?" Sword Young Master never expected that Ji-Yu would have such ability. He stomped on the ground, and the precious weapon on the ground flew into the air at this moment. He pointed forward with both hands, and the precious weapon flew out at this moment. In an instant, the life treasure split into thousands of life treasures in the air. He swung his hand down heavily. Those precious weapons were splitting apart. The precious weapons fell like meteors at this moment, exploding on the ground. Seeing this scene, Ji-Yu suddenly jumped up. Raging fire, burning city. A mystical skill suddenly burst out at this moment. Gold was most afraid of fire, especially so for Ji-Yu, who was so powerful. At this moment, he slowly approached. The raging fire burned the golden armored protectors, and gradually dripped down. They fell into a pool of blood one after another. Seeing this, Ji-Yu suddenly took 2 steps back. When he saw that, Ji-Yu's figure flickered, and he disappeared from where he was. The people behind him also flew forward. After a few figures landed, they entered the door in front of them. After a moment, the remaining 3 people also flew out quickly and directly entered the tomb. Ji-Yu suddenly stopped. In front of the tomb door in the air, a carving on the stone tablet appeared. At this moment, the carving turned into a mystical beast in the air, and a long dragon circled in the air. With a long roar, it suddenly turned its head. He descended in Ji-Yu's direction. He raised the huge claw in front of him and slammed it down. The dragon claw slammed heavily on his opponent's shield of vigor. At this moment, the 2 people's mystical energy scattered in all directions. The people around them were all sent flying backward. The remaining people looked at each other, got up and slowly walked towards Ji-Yu. Li Sijiao smiled faintly. "Are you going to challenge this mystical beast of the transformative stage alone?" Once a mystical beast entered the 9th level, it would directly turn into a dragon's head. Mo Yang, who had turned into an eagle, moved his hands. The surrounding wind started to blow, and it flew directly in the direction of the 2 people. Those feathers turned into sharp sword thorns, and at this moment, they fell. At this moment, they raised their hands, and at this moment, the protective aura covered their bodies. Clanging sounds rang out. When the thorns fell on the protective aura, the eagle saw this scene and actually grew a wing blade, and heavily slapped down the blade in its hand. Guan Yu also swung his precious weapon, and at this moment the 2 precious weapons collided. After a violent sound, the 3 people separated. At this moment, the 3 of them quickly separated and raised their heads at the same time. They didn't expect that a small mystical beast of the transformative stage would have such powerful strength. They didn't know how it grew to such a stage without any nourishment. In their hearts they were frightened. Sword Young Master threw out his precious weapon, and on the ground, the long swords linked together. After seeing this scene, Ji-Yu swung the precious weapon in her hand, and that precious weapon suddenly fell down. The rest of the people looked at Ji-Yu. Ji-Yu's body suddenly burst with a purple light, and the people were slightly surprised. They didn't expect that Ji-Yu had broken through to such a level in just 2 days. The mystical skill in his hands suddenly took a deep breath. The mystical beast in front of them suddenly retreated, and Ji-yu flew forward, and then punched out heavily. Boom! Another loud sound rang out. That mystical beast let out a wail and was about to pounce forward with a roar. It wanted to attack Ji-yu, but Ji-yu jumped up and came behind that mystical beast and punched out again. After a series of violent punches, they took 2 steps back, raised their hands, and suddenly pierced the mystical beast's throat. After saying this, they stood up and retreated to the back, blocking in front of Ji-yu. Guan Yu suddenly made a move, and yellow smoke spread out from his body. In the blink of an eye, it spread out in all directions. After seeing this scene, he flew up, jumped a few times, and walked forward. In an instant, they flew into the cave residence. They glanced at each other and stood up. Then, they glanced ahead. At this moment, Ji-yu took out her precious weapon and looked forward. Li Sijiao didn't have the intention to stop them. In her heart, she hoped that Guan Yu and Sword Young Master would join hands and kill this hateful Ji-yu. Seeing this, Ji-yu looked at the person in front of her and stopped in place. He said faintly, "Be careful." After shouting these words, 2 people came forward, and their gazes shot towards Ji-yu. Sword Young Master still thought that 2 people would attack at the same time. A bejeweled artifact instantly flew out from his hand. Ji-yu abruptly retreated, and the Sword Prince also stabbed down with his bejeweled artifact at this moment. Seeing this scene, Ji-yu suddenly raised her hands and waved them forward. Immediately, 2 masses of mystical energy gathered together and approached Ji-yu. Ji-yu suddenly jumped up and ran 2 steps back. She grabbed the spear with one hand and controlled the long sword with the other. Landing on the ground, Ji-yu suddenly stood up. She stepped on the ground, mystical energy suddenly appeared in her hands, and she swung her long sword heavily. That mystical energy gathered in front of Ji-yu at this moment. After the Kuan Pring giant sword stabbed into the ground, the mystical energy in the surroundings shook, and they were instantly sent flying, sliding on the ground. They spat out a mouthful of blood. Ji-yu looked forward. At this moment, a few people jumped up and charged towards Ji-yu. Ji-yu took out her precious weapon and blocked Guan Yu's long sword. After a sound of collision, she retreated explosively. Then, the people beside her took out their precious weapons and charged towards Ji-yu. Ji-yu suddenly turned around and slashed the Kuan Ping giant sword in her hand towards him. Then, a loud bang was heard. Their bodies flashed, and they arrived in Ji-yu's direction. Ji-yu swung her sword again. There was a loud sound of explosion. A ball of light appeared in their hands, and they charged in Ji-yu's direction. Ji-yu suddenly turned around and cut down the precious weapon in front of her. At this moment, blood burst out in all directions. Guan Yu's left hand was chopped off. Sword Young Master sucked in a breath of cold air, and the precious weapon in his hand shot out in an instant, and 3 loud bangs sounded. He jumped up, and Sword Young Master looked towards Ji-yu's direction. His heart was alarmed, and Li Sijiao attacked at the same time. Since Ji-yu wanted to kill Guan Yu and the others, there was no reason for them to return. Several swords collided. A series of loud noises were heard. Chapter 757. Without Guan Yu's help, Sword Young Master didn't have the strength to close in on the 2 of them. Ji-yu flicked Sword Young Master's left hand away. His left hand fell to the ground. The remaining people looked around. Sword Young Master's remaining hand was holding a sword. He looked in Ji-yu's direction and retreated a few steps. Seeing this scene, he said indifferently, "Today, Senior Brother Guan and I were killed by you here. When you go out, you will definitely be punished. Do it." Ji-yu said indifferently, "Sword Young Master and Senior Brother Guan died under the hands of this tomb guarding profound beast. What does it have to do with us?" He punched the 2's dantian. They took a deep breath. Their bodies went soft and they fell to the ground. Their dantian was instantly filled with profound energy. He flew out in a flash. He took a few steps forward and pulled out his treasure weapon. He suddenly turned around and waved the treasure weapon in his hand. After a loud bang, they stood up and looked in Ji-Yu's direction. Ji-Yu stretched out her hand. At this moment, she kicked Guan Yu and Sword Young Master out. The wailing profound beast never expected that such a good tonic would be delivered to its doorstep. It swallowed that person's body. Blood continuously dripped down. Sword Young Master and Guan Yu spurted out blood from their bodies. Ji-Yu slowly walked forward step by step. She closed her eyes. At this moment, profound energy spread out in all directions. After sweeping through a week, Ji-Yu finally stood up. She locked her profound energy on the people nearby. Ji-Yu took 2 steps forward and completely unsealed the door in front of her. She directly walked in. A pill floated in front of Ji-Yu. After swallowing a pill, Yi Zichen swallowed the pill. The profound energy in her body suddenly broke through. Boundless profound energy entered Ji-Yu's body. When Li Sijiao saw that Ji-Yu had broken through to the earth profound realm, she sucked in a breath of cold air in her heart. Ji-Yu said indifferently, "Now that this matter is over, I will return to the evolving temple." Li Sijiao's heart unexpectedly gave birth to a trace of reluctance. His heart skipped a beat. Ji-Yu went down the mountain and came to Yong City. It was another year of selection. Now, Ji-Yu was already over 18 years old. He smiled faintly. He didn't expect that so many days had passed. All of a sudden, an old man's shout was heard. "Wang Qing, level 3 profound strength, disqualified." Song Bei, 5th level profound strength, passed. Every year, many youths would stand in front of this spirit stone and test their profound strength. Next, Chu Fei. Countless pairs of eyes gathered on Chu Fei. A black-robed youth slowly walked forward. "Isn't that the servant entrusted to the Jiang family?" Yes, since 15 years ago, the Chu family had sacrificed their lives for the country. Who would have thought that Prime Minister Ji Hun would send his only orphan to a remote village like ours? I hope he can enter the Star Soul Academy. At this moment, the sound of a fierce horse neighing was heard. The crowd instantly panicked. "Isn't that Chu Fei?" A mocking voice was heard. Looking over, wasn't that Jiang Haochen? Why was he here? Jiang Haochen held a long whip and whipped it down. "You're just a servant in my family, yet you have delusions of entering the Star Soul Academy. I, your young master, haven't even entered yet." Chu Fei didn't dodge and took the whip head-on. The fist in his hand clenched even tighter. "I owe the Jiang clan a debt of gratitude for raising me. That whip just now severed the grudges between our 2 clans." There was a black metal ball in Chu Fei's fist. This was the wisdom left behind by his ancestors in his previous life. Even in this strange world, Chu Fei could still restore it. That was gunpowder. Jiang Haochen couldn't help but laugh. "If you leave the Jiang family, I'm afraid you won't even be able to be a beggar. Today, I'll whip you to death." Wait. The old man standing beside the boulder was suddenly furious. This group of new students didn't take him seriously, especially that skinny youth called Chu Fei. He was actually the descendant of a martyr. How could he be humiliated like this? He already said that he will cut off all ties with your family. How can you bully him like this? Jiang Haochen arrogantly said. "This kid ate our food and lived in our house since he was young. He didn't even need to work. What do you think? How about I whip him? Then do you still want to test? Breaking the rules of the exam, die." The old man's body emitted a purple light, and the crowd suddenly felt the pressure increase. Chu Fei couldn't avoid it. He clenched his teeth and persevered, not letting his body curl up like the others. When the old man saw that only Chu Fei was still persevering, he couldn't help but stroke his beard and nodded with satisfaction. Afraid of the aura released by the old man, Jiang Haochen could only obediently stand in front of the boulder. When he placed his palm on it, he saw a 3-colored light shoot up into the sky. 3rd level of profound strength, fail. The old man mercilessly sentenced him to death. Chu Fei, come forward. Chu Fei followed the others and placed his palm on the boulder. Suddenly, the 7-colored light soared into the sky and formed a cloud in the sky. What? Everyone present was stunned. It's actually the 9th level of profound strength, a kid who can directly break through to the defensive profound realm. The old man's eyes were so excited that tears flowed down. Such a rare genius actually appeared in front of him. Impossible, impossible! Jiang Haochen looked like he had gone mad. Another servant chuckled and whispered something in his ear. His face suddenly revealed a smile. Kid, if you want to leave the Jiang family, you must take 10 whips from me. How about it? This can be considered as repaying the favor. The old man was about to speak, but Chu Fei cupped his hands. Thank you for your help, teacher, but this is what I owe the Jiang family. He looked at Jiang Haochen firmly. Come. Jiang Haochen gritted his teeth and said, This is what you promised. Even if I beat you to death, you can't resist. This guy actually had the full profound strength. Jiang Haochen usually oppressed him so much. If he didn't kill him today, Chu Fei would definitely find him for revenge in the future. Just as he was about to whip him, an angry shout was heard. Presumptuous! The Jiang family's patriarch, Jiang Chuyue, urged his horse forward and whipped the ground, forcing Jiang Haochen to retreat. He glanced at his prodigal son and said, Stop fooling around. Get out of here. Father, this guy slap. Jiang Chuyue slapped his face heavily. Not to mention that this kid was a descendant of the Chu family, with his full profound strength. His future achievements would be unknown. Chu Fei is really worthy of being the great general's great-grandson. Why don't you come back with this old man and set up a feast? Not waiting for Chu Fei to speak, the old man laughed heartily. Forget it, this little friend will be a student of our Star Soul Academy from today onwards. The Star Soul Academy is not to be sullied in the future. Here are 5,000 gold coins, take it as repayment for your kindness in raising him. After saying that, he threw the bag into Jiang Chuyue's hands. Chu Fei walked in front of Jiang Chuyue, kneeled down and kowtowed 3 times. With each kowtow, he said a sentence. When Chu Fei was still a baby, the servant girl in the residence wanted to sell me. It was you who saved me. This first kowtow is to repay your kindness of saving my life. All these years, Chu Fei followed the teachers in the residence to learn how to read and write. This second kowtow is to repay your kindness of teaching me. All these years, Chu Fei didn't have to worry about food and clothing. This third kowtow is to repay your kindness of raising me. After the 3 kowtows, Jiang Chuyue could only sigh. Come with me, there are some notes that I need to tell you about. Today's test ends here, you can all go back. Wait. Jiyu slowly walked out from the side. Everyone looked in the direction of Jiyu. Chu Fei curiously looked at the young man in front of him. No one knew what he was thinking. The old man actually trembled and clasped his hand. Greetings to the earth profound realm venerable. Jiyu nodded and asked him, Are you willing to become my disciple? Disciple? After hearing this, Chu Fei's heart immediately became excited. He instantly kneeled on the ground. They all opened their mouths and said, An earth profound realm expert hasn't appeared in the 5 major regions for a long time. Jiang Haochen covered his face and walked in front of Jiang Chuyue. Father, why didn't you kill him on the spot? This child will be our Jiang clan's mortal enemy in the future. Sigh, how could our clan have such an unfilial son like you? Men, break his legs and send him back to the countryside. Staying here is a disgrace. Father, father. Ah! A scream came from outside the residence, but Chu Fei couldn't hear it. Jiyu threw a storage ring into his hand. There are 30 gold coins in here. It's the basic income of every disciple. There's also 30 square meters of storage space. There are 3 sets of spare clothes for the academy. According to your body, I think this should be enough. In addition, your admission certificate is also inside. Before you leave, Let me help you activate the protective aura profound skill. He pointed at the space between Chu Fei's eyebrows. Close your eyes and relax. No matter what you see later, just treat it as a part of your body. It was impossible to cultivate a disciple without talent. That was all he could say. After closing his eyes, Chu Fei could only hear a continuous sound of music. It was as if this song belonged only in the heavens, and he didn't know how many times he had heard it in the mortal world. It was as if a fairy from the 9 heavens was dancing beside him. Dang, dang, dang. 3 clear sounds of a bell rang out. An amiable-looking old Taoist appeared in front of him. A chuckle rang out, and Chu Fei fell from the sky in an instant, returning to his senses in an instant. Tao Talisman? The corners of Ji Yu's mouth curled up slightly. He didn't expect that his new disciple would be so capable. He said indifferently, "Not bad, not bad." Chapter 758. 30 gold coins wasn't a lot. They were still more than 130 kilometers away from the Evolution Temple. It wasn't that they didn't have a carriage, but Chu Fei felt that it was better to save some money before entering the temple. After Ji Yu handed the things to him, she stood up. "Then I'll go back first. I look forward to meeting you later. I'll first teach you the introductory mystic skill, 3,000 clouds movement." Ji Yu taught him the mental cultivation method. In the blink of an eye, she took a step forward and disappeared. After leaving the pipeline outside the city, it was basically a flat forest. Countless demonic beasts were roaring in the forest. Suddenly, a loud noise came from the ground. Several fast horses and a carriage flew out from behind. Sitting in the carriage, Jiang Haochen roared. "Quickly chase him. You must kill him for this young master." The servants agreed. After all, they had stepped into the soul personage realm. Even if Chu Fei had innate full soul power, what could they do? Seeing Chu Fei alone on the road, one of the servants shouted, "Young master, he's in front. Chu Fei, you betrayed the family. You deserve to be killed. You're smart. You dare to steal this young master's lines." He lashed the servant heavily with the whip. Chu Fei knew very well that he could not afford to offend these people, so he kept running. He had just obtained hope in this world, and he was not willing to die now. He didn't know how far he ran, but it seemed that he was deep in the forest. He lay on the ground, panting. The sound of horse hooves came soon after. The head servant laughed out loud. "Run, you're running." Jiang Haochen lifted the curtain of the carriage. His face showed a trace of ferocity. "Zhang San Li Si, kill him for me." The 2 people's eyes showed a fierce light. They each took out a precious weapon. The person who flew up first was holding a big machete. The machete was glowing with a blue light. A furious roar rang out in an instant. The 2 servants saw a giant wolf with thorns all over its body slowly walk out. Saliva flowed from the corner of its mouth. It turned out that Chu Fei had been holding a stick of incense. It was this stick of incense that lured the giant wolf over. 3 gold coins were gone just like that. The 2 people in front of him looked at each other and slowly stepped back. Jiang Haochen laughed. "Chu Fei will definitely die under this monster. We just need to be careful." Zhang San cupped his hands and said, "Young master, this is a 2nd-rank demonic beast, the Greenwood demonic wolf. The spikes on its body are extremely poisonous. Young master, we cannot continue to stay here." Jiang Haochen immediately lost interest. After all, his life was more important. "This brat will most likely lose his life. Young master, let's leave quickly." "That's true. Escaping is more important." Without a target, the Greenwood demonic wolf glared at Chu Fei. Chu Fei tossed the fragrant wood in his handout. The Greenwood demon wolf actually swallowed the fragrant wood in one gulp. However, how could such a small piece of fragrant wood satisfy the appetite of such a huge demon beast? It bared its fangs ferociously and pounced toward Chu Fei's neck. Chu Fei hurriedly dodged to the side. Why hasn't the poison on the fragrant wood taken effect yet? Before he left, he had clearly coated the fragrant wood with poison. He hurriedly picked up the dead branches on the ground and waved them around. A burning pain came from his back. Not good. Chu Fei felt the world spinning above his head. The poison on the demonic wolf's body also took effect at this moment, causing his body to sway. How could a demonic beast allow its enemy to still be alive before it fainted? It suddenly pounced forward. If you like to eat it, I'll give it to you. After igniting the fuse, Chu Fei threw out his gunpowder bomb. Fortunately, the demonic beast opened its huge mouth and swallowed the gunpowder bomb. However, at the same time, it left a claw mark in front of Chu Fei. Boom! A loud sound was heard. Surprisingly, the demonic beast's corpse did not explode. However, the demonic beast still collapsed. Chu Fei crawled on the ground and used the stone beside him to hit the demonic beast's head again and again until he fainted. When he woke up, the smell of medicine assailed his nostrils. "You're awake." A lively girl's voice slowly sounded. Chu Fei saw a fair-skinned girl wearing a red robe with a small ponytail on her head. She was an iconic little loli. The little loli blinked her big watery eyes. "Grandpa, come quickly. He's awake." "Ling don't disturb him too loudly. The guest has just woken up." Chu Fei naturally knew that he was saved by these two good people in front of him, so he cupped his hands to thank them and asked for their names. "This old man's name is He Pan. This is this old man's granddaughter, Ling. Greetings to the two of you. May I know where this place is?" "Haha, this is a thatched hut that we temporarily built. This old man and Ling were picking herbs in the forest when we saw little friend faint, so we came to save him." "Thank you, old mister." After chatting for a while, Ling came in with a bowl of clear soup. "I'm ashamed to say that there's nothing good in the forest. The greenwood demonic wolf's body was full of poison, so its meat could not be eaten. Since it was little friend who killed it, I took it back. A mere corpse is not very useful. If old mister needs it, you can take it." He Pan laughed and walked out of the door. Chu Fei immediately sat cross-legged on the bed. Since he woke up, his natal soul artifact seemed to be constantly trembling as if it could not be suppressed. A talisman appeared in his hands. He sketched out a stroke. Could this be the legendary Xian skill? He activated the talisman in front of him, but it had no effect. With a sigh, he put the talisman away. With his mood down, he was a bit hungry, so he ran to the kitchen. Fortunately, he lived alone when he was young. Using the only flour he had, he kneaded it into a ball of noodles. After boiling it with water, he fished it out. After sprinkling chili and green onions, he splashed it with hot oil. 3 bowls of not-so-exquisite noodles were completed in an instant. He Pan and Ling ate. He Pan was a bit better. After tasting a mouthful, she drank cold water because of the chili. On the other hand, Ling was clearly sweating from the spiciness, but she still ate heartily. Eat slowly, otherwise it's easy to get choked. Even Xian cultivators need to be careful. He Pan wiped her hands and patted her granddaughter's head. It seems like this girl doesn't have the fortune to become a Xian cultivator, but she can become an alchemist. That's not bad. Chu Fei said, "My master is in the evolving temple. You can come with me and we can all become his disciples." Jiyu returned to the evolving temple. It was said that Yi Chume had something to do and left the temple. Jiyu sat cross-legged in his manner with his eyes closed, feeling the energy fluctuations around him. The little girl ran in and knocked on the door. "Young master, there are 2 people outside who want to see you." Jiyu stood up and walked out of the door. Chu Fei looked firmly at Jiyu. Jiyu smiled, walked forward, and touched his forehead. Seeing an old man and a young girl standing behind him, he asked curiously, "Who are these 2? The old man stepped forward. Little friend Chu Fei was being hunted down in the 10,000 Beast Mountain range. This old man saved him. After hearing this, Ji clenched his fist. He said indifferently, "You want to kill my disciple? You're quite bold." Chu Fei's heart trembled. He didn't have any family since he was young. How could he not be excited to receive such treatment? Ji said indifferently, "Little Ye, take him to rest first." Ji stepped forward, but Chu Fei still didn't move. Chu Fei instantly knelt on the ground and said to Ji, "Master, please recommend an alchemy grandmaster to take my little sister." Suddenly, the little girl burst out laughing. Chu Fei asked with a puzzled expression, "I don't know what senior sister is laughing about. I'm only young master's servant. Young master said that I don't have the talent for cultivation. You can call me Big Sister Little Ye in the future. However, if you ask master to recommend an alchemy grandmaster, you're wrong. The one standing in front of you is an alchemy grandmaster." Ji smiled. Chu Fei was excited. "Ling come and greet master." Ji could see that Ling Er's profound roots weren't very good, but her ability to communicate with the energy of heaven and earth was quite good. If she was interested in the art of alchemy, her future would be bright. With that thought in mind, Ji took out a storage ring. "Take this storage ring first. There's a scripture inside. You can take a look at it first." She took a look at the contents of the scripture. Chu Fei also took a look. However, in Chu Fei's eyes, it was a pile of things that he didn't know what to say. However, in Ling Er's eyes, it recorded all kinds of details. She took a deep breath and immediately said, "Thank you, Master. Master is the best." Ji giggled and took in 2 disciples. A few people who had a good relationship with Ji came forward. "Congratulations, junior brother. You've taken in a good disciple." "That's right. Congratulations, junior brother." They cupped their hands and looked at Ji. Ji smiled faintly. Yi Chu-mei wasn't here right now, so Ji was in charge of formation refining peak. "I wonder where master has gone to?" He sighed. The 2 of them cupped their hands and said, "Young master, although the Lord isn't here, you still have to take over the daily affairs. Please meet the various heads." Ji nodded. As the first seat and the only inner sect disciple, he sat on the chair at the head of the hall. Ji said faintly, "Call in the heads of the various places." Instantly, 7 or 8 people slowly walked in and stood in front of Ji. The old master in the lead walked out first. "I am Zhou Ming. I'm in charge of Xuanzhen Peak's provisions and mystic stones." After he said that, a youth beside him walked out. "I am Fu Bohai. I'm in charge of the disciples' cultivation. However, Xuanzhen Peak only has one last disciple in these years. I'm in charge of teaching the outer sect. No wonder Ji didn't see him these days." Chapter 759. The remaining old woman was called Old Madam Ming. She was in charge of the food, lodging and clothing of everyone on the peak. As for traveling, there was no need for that since everyone here was Xian cultivators. Ji closed her eyes and said indifferently, "Then from today onwards I'll be counting on you." Everyone stood up and clasped their hands together. Ji walked out of the door. Fu Bowen walked up and whispered in Ji's ear, "Senior brother chief, we should go to the outer gate and have a look." Ji nodded. He came to the outer gate. Everyone stopped what they were doing and raised their heads one after another. This was the disciple from the 10 sacred sects, and according to the rules they had to stay there for 10 years. He didn't know how powerful Ji was. Right at that moment a few people ran out from the side. All of them held treasures in their hands and looked in Ji's direction. Fu Bowen said, "Senior brother chief, this is the person from the Snow Sect. The Snow Sect is one of the 10 sacred sects." After saying that, a few people jumped out. One of them said, "I am Mount. A few days ago, I came to visit the Evolving Temple. I don't know if it's because I'm lucky, or because the Evolving Temple is not as strong as it was 100 years ago." Fu Bowen snorted, "How dare you? This is the Evolving Temple's territory." Ha ha, this is the Xian cultivator's territory. We should use our strength. After saying this, Mount and Ji Yu looked at each other. Ji Yu picked up the weapon beside her and raised her hand. There was a fire elemental energy circling above the weapon. Seeing the Xian energy of fire on the treasure artifact in Ji Yu's hand, he immediately tensed up and was overjoyed. What abundant Xian energy! But kid, you have to be careful. I'm an expert of the 8th profound realm. If you die under my sword, you have to blame the snow sect. After shouting these words, he raised the artifact in his hand and charged towards Ji Yu. The two of them thrust their swords at each other and collided in the air. The two of them retreated and Ji Yu looked forward. At the same time, a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Ji Yu took 2 steps forward and stabbed the treasured weapon in his hand into the ground. Boom! It was accompanied by a ball of raging fire. The temperature of the blazing flames swallowed everything in the vicinity. Ji Yu leaped into the air and ran forward in a flash. The raging flames carried with them a destructive aura that seemed to be tearing apart the surrounding space. The surrounding space was constantly distorting. His body flashed, and he instantly appeared in front of Ji Yu. Their fists collided, and after a loud bang, Ji Yu immediately flew backward. He raised his head and looked in Ji Yu's direction. Ji Yu said indifferently, "Kill!" After letting out a scream, the man was sent flying and crashed into a huge rock. Mount spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. He looked in the direction of Ji Yu and said indifferently to Ji Yu, "Good, good, good. I didn't expect that after so many years, I would finally find an expert." After shouting out these words, Li Yundong was stunned. Mount's body flashed, and he suddenly pounced in the direction of Ji Yu. Ji Yu sensed his strength and punched the ground. In an instant, the ground burst open. Ji Yu abruptly took a step back and disappeared from where he stood. In the blink of an eye, Ji Yu appeared in front of Mount. She raised the precious weapon in her hand and suddenly stabbed down. Mount still wanted to dodge, but his body seemed to be fixed in place. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't move. Mount couldn't understand how someone who was so much younger than him could be so strong. She could beat him into this state with one punch. After thinking about this in his heart, at this time, the 2 people beside him quickly jumped up and landed in front of Ji Yu. They raised their heads and looked in the direction of Ji Yu. Xian skill, gravitational star push. Xian skill, boundless red dust. The 2 people wanted to save Mount, and they both used Earth Xian skills. At this time, the stars fell down. A stone hit the ground, and with a loud explosion, the surrounding flames spread in all directions. Everyone was hit by this force, and they were sent flying backward. Ji Yu punched Mount's chest. A few of Mount's ribs were shattered by Ji Yu's punch. He spat out a mouthful of blood and pointed in Ji Yu's direction. So strong. He originally thought that the 2 of them could have a quick and painful fight. He didn't expect that he would be defeated with one punch. It was simply unimaginable. Most importantly, the people behind her had appeared in front of her in a flash. They turned around abruptly and slammed their fists heavily on the ground. When Ji Yu saw this, he jumped up in shock. With a flash of his body, he disappeared from his original spot in an instant. The impact of the profound energy was at this moment, and the surrounding energy was gathering at this moment. He let out a miserable shriek. His whole body fell to the ground. With great difficulty, he slowly stood up and looked around. The 2 people saw Ji Yu. In a flash, they appeared in front of Ji Yu. A gust of Xian energy exploded from Ji Yu's body. The people around them all retreated in fear. Ji Yu looked forward. Ji Yu's aggressive approach made the people behind her look at each other. One of them said, "We are guests here. You don't dare to kill us." Only then did Ji Yu stop. The man laughed and said, "I am a disciple of the Snowgate sect." Before he finished speaking, Ji Yu suddenly stabbed out with her sword and chopped off his head. He turned around abruptly and looked forward. Ji Yu said indifferently, Is that so? Blood flowed from his body. He saw that his body was covered in blood. His whole body trembled, and the precious weapon in his hand fell to the ground. They were panting heavily. Ji-yu took a step forward, and with a flash, he disappeared from where he stood. Ji-yu didn't care about the trouble they caused. He just ordered the people to detain all these people. As for the person covered in blood, he asked them to send him to the other side and use elixirs to keep him alive. After he walked out, his body flashed and he disappeared in a flash. In the blink of an eye, he arrived at another place. Ji-yu took a few steps forward and ordered someone to guard the house. Then, he used the 3,000 clouds movement and arrived at a place not far away in an extremely short amount of time. He landed on the ground and looked in front of him. Then, he said calmly, "Guards." With a flash of his body, he disappeared from where he stood. A carriage came out of the city shakily. A few people walked down from the carriage and looked in Ji-yu's direction. A lackey walked up shakily and pointed at Ji-yu's nose and scolded. "Kid, I advise you to get out of the way. Otherwise, be careful of your dog life." After shouting these words, the two people looked at each other. Ji-yu flashed and came in front of him in an instant. He directly grabbed his neck. "Do you know Chu-fei?" The man found that no matter how hard he struggled, it seemed to be useless. He shouted loudly, "I know him, I know him." Ji-yu let go. "Who is Jiang Haochen?" After hearing these words, the two people looked at each other. Ji-yu took 2 steps forward. Jiang Haochen walked down from the carriage. He frowned and said, "Who is it?" After hearing this, the two of them looked at each other. Jiang Haochen took a step forward, and Jiang Haochen set his eyes on Ji-yu. "Brat, how dare you? Don't you know who I am?" he said heavily. "I am the only son of the Jiang family. Kill him for me." After saying these words, the people behind gradually approached. Before, it was Ji-yu who beat the younger one, and the older one ran out. This time, it was his turn to stand up for the younger one. He sighed in his heart. Ji-yu took a step forward. His body flashed, and the huge Kuan-ping sword in his hand suddenly flew out. The precious weapon fell like a meteor. At this moment, the Kuan-ping precious weapon produced 2 balls of fire and fell to the ground. With a loud bang, the people around were sent flying. After seeing this scene, they looked at each other. A master of the defensive profound realm exploded and died in the blink of an eye. What kind of master was this? His body kept trembling. Jiang Haochen raised his hand and yelled, "Kill!" The people around ran in the direction of Ji-yu. After seeing this scene, Ji-yu disappeared and the Kuan-ping precious weapon appeared in his hand in an instant. He waved the huge Kuan-ping sword in his hand and touched the necks of the 2 people beside him. Blood dripped down at this moment, and they fell into a pool of blood. At this moment, the person next to him was closing in on Ji-yu. After seeing this scene, Jiang Haochen ran wildly backward. Ji-yu took a few steps forward. At this moment, there was a loud thunder in the sky. After a few ups and downs, they landed in front of Jiang Haochen. Jiang Chuyue walked out, clasped his hands and said, "Young master, how did our Jiang family offend you?" After hearing this, Ji-yu took 2 steps forward. "Don't you deserve to die for humiliating my disciple?" Chapter 760. Hearing this, Jiang Chuyue's face darkened. She stared at Ji-yu. "So, you don't want to give this old man face?" Ji-yu looked at old man Jiang coldly. "My disciple is indebted to you. I don't want to hurt you. Get out of the way. What can you do if this old man doesn't move?" In the blink of an eye, a ball of purple light burst out of old Jiang's body. His eyes were fixed on Ji-yu. "Spirit profound realm is no match for me. So what? Boy, if you want to kill my son today, you have to step over my dead body first." He raised the precious weapon in his hand and instantly appeared in front of Ji-yu. He slashed down with his sword, creating a sound of wind breaking. The surrounding leaves fell down one by one. The leaves were swept up like a gust of wind blowing toward Ji-yu. Ji-yu's body flashed and disappeared in an instant. Old man Jiang looked around in horror. He didn't understand how there could be such a monstrous movement in this world. In an instant Ji-yu reappeared, but this time she was in front of Jiang Haochen. Jiang Haochen fell on his butt on the ground. Scared out of his wits, he shouted anxiously, "Dad, save me. Boy, you're courting death." Ji-yu's mouth curved into a smile. In the blink of an eye, old man Jiang appeared behind Ji-yu. Ji-yu suddenly turned around and stabbed with her precious weapon. He let out a blood-curdling scream. Ji-yu merely pierced through his dantian, and a surge of valiant mystic energy started to circulate around him. At this moment, the Xian force was slowly flowing around. His body flashed and instantly appeared in front of old man Jiang. He raised the precious weapon in his hand and slashed down with the long sword. Old man Jiang had closed his eyes, waiting for the arrival of the death god. But he didn't expect that Ji-yu still cut off his left arm. He clutched his arm and screamed in pain. As for the rest, let Chu Fei find you and take revenge on him. After Ji-yu left, the old man slapped Jiang Haochen's face again. What a good-for-nothing! What kind of monster did you provoke? Jiang Haochen covered his face and wept in pain. His tears and snot flowed down together. He fell to the ground. Ji-yu had just returned to the sect. The red-robed girl was swinging her legs and sleeping on a tree branch. When she saw Ji-yu, she smiled mischievously. Ji-yu asked, "Who's there?" At the same time, a leaf flew out at the same time and stabbed into the tree. Just one leaf was enough to cut the entire tree in half. A loud crack was heard. With a bang, the tree trunk fell and smashed into the ground. The red-clothed girl cried out and patted her butt. She was furious in her heart. This guy didn't know what was good for him. How could he make a move on such a beautiful little sister? Ji-yu. Ji-yu asked, "It's you." Can you do me a favor? I don't have time. He walked in the direction of the sect. If Ji-yu went in, they would all be finished. The red-clothed girl thought in her heart, so she quickly stepped forward and grabbed Ji-yu's hand. "Wait! Don't go, good brother!" The red-clothed girl kept pulling Ji-yu's hand. Ji-yu stopped. "Tell me, what do you want me to help you with?" "Help me steal the Annihilation Tome." Ji-yu patted her head. "Hey, don't pat my head. I won't grow tall." Ji-yu said coldly, "Do you know the status of this book in the Evolution Temple?" "I don't care." Yi Chushin. Seeing Ji-yu call out her name, the red-clothed girl was slightly surprised. "How do you know my name?" "Master once told me that he had a sister who betrayed the Evolution Temple. I think it's you." Yi Chushin didn't deny it. She just angrily stomped her foot and asked Ji-yu, "Then are you going to help me or not? I'm still your martial uncle." "Not unless you're willing to take me to see the person behind you." Yi Chushin was stunned. She didn't expect Ji-yu to make such a request. After hesitating for a moment, she braced herself and said, "Wait for me." She hid behind a tree and did something. After a while, she came out. "My holy lord wants to see you." There was a trace of worry in her eyes. Ji-yu patted her shoulder and said, "Lead the way." The two left the Star Luo Empire. 3 days later, they arrived at the artifact-grade mountain range of the Feiluo Empire. According to legend, 2 great experts fought here. Who knew that neither of them could defeat the other? A few hundred years later, the two died here because their meridians were cut off. Later, a sect called the Artifact Grade Sect rose up and became one of the 10 great mysterious sections. "You betrayed the Evolution Temple for the Artifact Grade Sect?" Yi Chushin blushed but didn't say anything. She just took 2 steps forward. A red light flashed in the air. Suddenly, the 10,000 miles of secular dust floated in the air. A young man with a floating robe stood on the mountain peak. He looked at Ji-yu with interest as if a precious toy had come. He flew down and walked in front of Ji-yu. "Senior brother, you mustn't do anything. Unfortunately, it was too late. Dozens of 8th grade artifacts suddenly flew out from behind him and flew in Ji-Yu's direction. However, Ji-Yu sensed the threads of mystic energy on these artifacts and knew that he didn't use too much strength. He should be testing her. Ji-Yu jumped up. 3,000 clouds movement was instantly used. His figure was like a ghost as he walked on the ground. Ding, the host used 3,000 clouds movement. Obtained 1 by 999 experience point. In the blink of an eye, he stood on the tree. His hand slid down heavily, and the sound of thunder exploded in the air. He secretly praised in his heart. Good skill. The two exchanged over 100 moves in the air. That person landed on the ground and reached out with his hand. In an instant, the dozens of treasures merged into one and returned to his hand. Junior sister, he said coolly, where did you kidnap this guy from? He's pretty fun to play with. The two exchanged hundreds of moves in a short time. Yi Chuchu's heart was in the air. Fortunately, neither of them used killing moves. Otherwise, how could they be so peaceful now? Senior brother, this is the Holy Emperor's guest. I see. My name is Chen Xian. Greetings, young master. Ji-Yu cupped his hands and returned the greeting. Chen Xian is like a sword, invincible in the world. Greetings, senior brother. Su Ming, let's not talk about that. How did you do that move just now? Chen Xian asked Ji-Yu anxiously. Ji-Yu smiled faintly. Do you want to learn? I'll teach you. Really? If that's true, then I'll leave it to you. He deeply bent his waist and arched his body toward Ji-Yu. Ji-Yu was a little surprised. Only now did Ji-Yu see such a humble person. He smiled faintly and said, okay. While the two were having a heated discussion, Yi Chuchu walked up anxiously. The Holy Emperor is still waiting. Ji-Yu just remembered that she seemed to have come to the Grade Tool sect for business, so she smiled. When they entered the main hall, Ji-Yu sensed that 4 or 5 spiritual powers swept over him. Those people landed on the ground and asked Ji-Yu questions. Ji-Yu, I didn't expect you to know Chu-Chu. Yes. Are you willing to help us? Why? The 4th elder of the Evolving Temple is a member of the Tianyi School. If the Tianyi School starts a sect-exterminating war, you'll have to die. Really? We can solve it ourselves. The Holy Emperor suddenly laughed. You've entered the profound world realm. That's good. It means you're strong enough. But do you think that can stop those people? They're controlled by an evil sect. What? Ji-Yu was slightly surprised. The Tianyi School was known as a righteous sect. It said that as long as someone can decipher the secrets of the wordless heavenly book, they'll be able to obtain supreme mystic power and step into the life and death realm. Who knows? Bullsh *T. That book is a book that I didn't have time to write back then, and they're praising it like this. The Queen of Ice and Frost's voice sounded in Ji-Yu's mind. Ji-Yu burst out laughing. She didn't expect that the wordless heavenly book that everyone in the world was looking for was just a playful creation of the Queen. It was a bit like a big thief in her previous life. However, Ji-Yu soon stopped laughing. The Holy Emperor frowned slightly. Why do you think it's funny? The white-haired old man beside him wasn't so gentle. He had already taken a step forward and stepped on the ground. A powerful mystic power directly pressed down on Ji-Yu. It was as if a huge mountain was pressing down. Ji-Yu immediately felt the pressure increase. He never expected that the other party was actually an expert of the 3rd layer of the Earth Profound Realm. It seemed that he had underestimated the heroes of this world. However, Ji-Yu was an expert of the Earth Profound Realm formed from 5 elements. Every time she wanted to increase her mystic power, she had to increase all 5 realms. Seeing Ji-Yu slowly straighten her body, the old man's eyes revealed a shocked expression. This brat was only 20 years old. To be able to step into the Earth Profound Realm was already very shocking. Now, he was actually able to resist the pressure of the third layer of the earth-profound realm with the strength of the first layer of the earth-profound realm. Heavens, what's wrong with this world? Isn't this world too crazy? Ji said indifferently. Holy Emperor, is this your attitude when you want to cooperate? The Holy Emperor flung his robe. Instantly, the pressure on Ji was greatly reduced. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief. Before, this old man was wrong. Little friend, this old man apologizes to you. However, Mr. insulted the heavenly book. Shouldn't you apologize? Chapter 761. Ji suddenly laughed out loud. Everyone in the hall was confused. Could it be that this brat was really that bold? After laughing, Ji rubbed his nose and said, "Haven't you guessed that there might be nothing in the Book of Xian? How dare you? The wordless book left behind by the senior is not something a little profound earth realm cultivator like you can talk nonsense about. I'm just a profound earth realm cultivator, but now that the 9 prefectures have been sealed off, our prefecture is the only one that is independent of the 13 prefectures. Here's the problem. If the wordless book is so powerful, it should have been translated by the big shots of each realm long ago. Ji was able to do this. If they still thought that it was a huge treasure, then they could only blame themselves. No matter what, please steal the Book of Xian. We'll definitely give you a big gift. Ji saw that they wouldn't listen to him, so he changed the topic and said, "We're going to revive the Ice Queen." What? Ji suddenly opened his eyes wide. They said with a smile, "The Ice Queen statue in the 4 prefectures has already lost its divine power. If we're not wrong, the light has already appeared," he said to Ji with excitement on his face. He even had a satisfied smile on his face. Ji clenched his fist. He didn't expect that his thoughts would become reality at this moment. He turned his head. Okay. This simple word made everyone stop talking. Ji returned to the evolving temple and found the treasure pavilion. If he didn't have the qualifications to enter before, now that he entered the Tianyi Gate, his qualifications were fully opened. He walked into the evolving temple. He closed his eyes and spread his divine sense in all directions. He suddenly opened his eyes wide and looked in another direction. Suddenly, an old man appeared in front of him. He walked over slowly. Although he was very slow, he gave people the feeling that he was like lightning. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Ji. He slowly opened his mouth and said, "Little friend, you're here." Ji said calmly, "Sir, you seem to have known that I would come out. This old man has been here for hundreds of years. What is there that I don't know?" As he spoke, he placed a book in Ji's hand. Originally, the things of our sect would never be leaked to outsiders. But if it's them, then it doesn't matter. Most of the people from the Grade Tool sect were now from the Evolving Temple. His figure flashed and disappeared from where he stood. After a while, he appeared not far away and stopped his figure. After a few jumps, Ji appeared not far away. The 4th elder suddenly appeared in front of Ji and saw that there seemed to be something wrapped around Ji's back. "What's behind you?" Upon hearing this, Ji took out a book from behind her back and placed it in front of him. Seeing this book, he clenched his hands into fists and flew forward. He heavily punched out, hitting the ground. Along with a loud boom, there was a loud sound. After a few jumps, Ji landed on a huge tree. She said coldly, "4th elder, why are you attacking me? Yichume isn't here right now. The Xianyu peak should be mine." Suddenly, many people flew out from the surroundings. Chu Fei passed by. Although his cultivation was still low, he was very grateful to Ji. He ran in front of Ji. "If you want to hurt my master, you'll have to step over my dead body." Ji glanced at him and smiled. The two people's 4 swords clashed together crazily. A few disciples said disdainfully, "Chu Fei, you've only joined our sect for about a month. How capable can you be? Chu Fei gritted his teeth and shouted, "Don't underestimate me. My master taught me many things in this month." Everyone laughed out loud. Suddenly, they flew out and attacked Chu Fei fiercely and quickly. Chu Fei immediately felt the pressure on his body increase greatly. As he retreated step by step, he suddenly raised his hand and used the precious weapon beside him to block his body. Ji Yu's body flashed and appeared in front of him. She suddenly chopped down with her sword. After a violent collision, she suddenly turned around and chopped down with her sword. Seeing the huge sword chopping down, Chu Fei closed his eyes. Chu Fei closed his eyes and waited for the Grim Reaper to descend. He suddenly disappeared from where he stood. In an instant, Ji Yu's heavy sword flew down and stabbed into the ground. He stood on the tip of the sword. He scanned the surroundings with his gaze. At that moment, the person next to him flew up and charged in Ji Yu's direction. Ji Yu instantly disappeared from the spot. The people around him were shocked. This kid was so agile. Thinking of this, they quickly thought of countermeasures. Ji Yu's body flashed and appeared not far away. He opened his eyes slightly and chopped down with the heavy sword in his hand. In the blink of an eye, Ji Yu disappeared. A moment later, he flew out and landed on the ground. He ran forward a few steps. Suddenly, a ball of fire appeared in front of him. The fire directly exploded in the direction of Ji Yu. In an instant, he flew in front of Ji Yu and chopped down with the heavy sword in his hand. Ji Yu dodged to the side. Ji Yu disappeared in the blink of an eye. A moment later, he appeared not far away and looked in the direction of Ji Yu. He took 2 steps in 1 step. He appeared in front of Ji Yu. Ji Yu stabbed the huge sword of Kuan Pring into the ground in the blink of an eye. Raging flames suddenly burst out from the ground and flew forward. Ji Yu abruptly turned around. In the blink of an eye, the flames flew forward and Ji Yu appeared in the middle of the ground. He flashed and appeared beside Ji Yu. The fire was unable to burn his body. Seeing this, Ji Yu suddenly spun and chopped down with the heavy sword. Seeing this, Ji Yu suddenly turned around and flew in the direction of Ji Yu. Ji Yu quickly dodged to the side. When he saw this, he abruptly raised his hand. In the blink of an eye, he flew in front of Ji Yu. He suddenly raised his hand and chopped down. Ji Yu chopped down with the sword. He flew forward. Their fists collided with each other. A ball of fire burst out, which suddenly swooped in the direction of Ji Yu. Ji Yu's figure flashed as he dodged the attack. He chopped down the huge sword of Kuan Ping. With a loud bang, a thick layer of dust was stirred up in the field. The 2 swords collided with each other, making a violent explosion. He landed on the ground, waved his precious weapon, and rushed in the direction of Ji Yu. Ji Yu disappeared in the blink of an eye. After a while, he appeared in front of Ji Yu in the blink of an eye and stabbed down with the 2 swords. Ji Yu stepped forward and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Only then did everyone open their eyes and find that Ji Yu had disappeared. The 4th elder couldn't help but be furious. Preposterous! This brat is as cunning as a fish. Find him for me. Everyone cupped their fists and said yes. Ji Yu grabbed Chu Fei. Chu Fei anxiously shouted, "Ling still hasn't escaped." Ji Yu stood in the middle of the field. She looked around. Ling was still happily looking for spiritual herbs. When she saw Ji Yu and Chu Fei, she said happily, "Master, look, I've picked a stalk of immortal sprout grass." Ji Yu patted her head, grabbed the 2 of them, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The 3,000 clouds movement was activated again. In the blink of an eye, Ji Yu landed not far away. He looked down. Ji Yu disappeared in the blink of an eye. Suddenly, 2 men in black stabbed out with their swords, waving them in front of Ji Yu. In the blink of an eye, they were behind Ji Yu. He said faintly, "Be careful." He waved the treasured weapon in his hand and charged in Ji Yu's direction. Ji Yu turned around abruptly and took a step forward. "You 2 hide behind me for a while," he said calmly. The two of them hurriedly walked out. In the blink of an eye, he was behind Ji-yu. He opened his eyes slightly and said indifferently to Ji-yu, "Kill?" After shouting these words, he charged in Ji-yu's direction. The two men in black seemed to be coming for Ji-yu as well. Ji-yu felt a sense of familiarity from one of the men in black. Weren't they the two men who had chased after Yi Chushin? The two men in black raised their treasured weapons and charged in Ji-yu's direction. He flew forward. Ji-yu sneered. Suddenly, two balls of fire separated from his palms. The two balls of fire directly shot in front of Ji-yu. Ji-yu slapped them out with a backhand. With a loud boom, the two balls of fire flew in all directions. Boom! An explosive sound rang out. They flew into the air, and with a flash of their bodies, they retreated. Ji-yu waved the treasured weapon in his hand. The two men were shocked. When they saw this kid a few days ago, he didn't have such strength. What was going on? He's in the profound earth realm. One of the men in black shouted. Ji-yu landed on the ground in the blink of an eye and pressed forward step by step. In the blink of an eye, the treasured weapon chopped down. The heavy sword slashed down, falling to the ground and bursting apart. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.